Chapter 1478. The martial artist's aura was in disarray, his left hand dangling weakly at his side. It was clear that he had been injured. The suction of the underground cavern was so powerful that besides Wang Chong, many other martial artists had also been sucked into this complex cavern. Buzz! Wang Chong immediately charged toward the martial artist. At almost the same time, the martial artist seemed to sense Wang Chong's aura, and a look of pleasant surprise appeared on his face as he rushed toward Wang Chong. But before he could take more than a few steps, there was a heaven-shaking roar as an enormous figure exuding the aura of a primordial beast appeared behind the martial artist. The massive maw opened wide and bit down on the martial artist from behind. Each of those savage teeth was 2 to 3 feet long, and they stabbed into the martial artist's body. Ah! Save me! At the last moment, the martial artist's eyes went wide as he stared at Wang Chong, a deep fear and despair in them. With a deafening roar, the massive beast behind the martial artist grabbed him in its jaws and dragged him away. Damn it! With no time to think, Wang Chong raised his palm and almost instinctively thrust out a palm. A majestic wave of stellar energy howled forward. Boom! The stone on the ground exploded into a cloud of dust, but the monster had long since vanished. Just what was that thing? Wang Chong's expression darkened, his mind extremely grave. That was not a creature that normally existed in the world. No creature could survive so deep underground, and it had even been able to easily dodge Wang Chong's attack. At Wang Chong's level of cultivation, even if he had been half a beat slower, his opponent would not have been able to escape so easily. The monster's speed was obviously extremely fast. The surroundings quickly regained their calm, and there was no sound at all. However, there were clearly undercurrents surging in the void, and it was filled with an extremely dangerous aura. Wang Chong did not dare to be careless and restrained his energy to the minimum. However, in the next moment, without the slightest sign, a strong sense of danger suddenly arose in his heart and grew exponentially. In the blink of an eye, it was so strong that it was suffocating. That familiar roar once more resounded in his ear, but this time, it did not come from in front of him, but from behind him. Bang! In a flash, Wang Chong turned around and immediately retreated. Boundless stellar energy surged into his palms as he thrust them at the massive monster. There was a heaven-shaking boom as the palms collided. The moment they collided, Wang Chong felt like he had struck a sturdy wall. At the same time, a surging energy jolted back at Wang Chong. Rumble! This enormous energy actually pushed Wang Chong back, and 2 deep furrows appeared under his feet. As a peak imperial great general, this was the first time Wang Chong had encountered an existence that could completely suppress him in terms of strength. But it was also at this moment that Wang Chong finally saw the true appearance of that massive monster. This was an extremely savage beast that seemed like an ox but wasn't, like a lion but wasn't. It had a horn on its head and 4 hooves on its feet. Its entire body was 6 to 7 meters tall and nearly 10 meters long. Its skin was hard and thick, and it was covered in layers of black scales. Each scale was about the size of a palm. Just what sort of creature is this? Wang Chong's body trembled as he felt an unprecedented shock. He had never thought that there would be such a terrifying creature in this depth of 16,000 to 17,000 meters underground. Those scarlet eyes, savage fangs, and a strength that surpassed the peak great general level had completely surpassed his imagination. The dragon beast should have awakened by now. As Wang Chong fought with that unknown beast, he had no idea that at this very moment, many figures were standing at the edge of the pit, looking down into it. These guardians of the Origin Immortal Treasury had not entered the depths of the pit, and even though they were 16,000 meters away, they knew everything that was happening underground like the back of their hands. "Milord, there are more martial artists underground than we imagined. Can the dragon beasts alone really deal with them?" At this moment, a figure suddenly spoke. So what if there are more martial artists? Do you think they can deal with the dragon beasts that have survived for more than 1,000 years from ancient times? The leader indifferently said, his expression brimming with confidence. If Wang Chong were here, he would definitely be stunned. Based on the words of these guardians, These dragon beasts were ancient creatures from another era that ordinary people could not contend against. Dragon beasts are born with strength, and the longer they live, the stronger they get. These are the guardian beasts that were sealed into the abyss when the immortal lord died. Their strength has long since surpassed that of this era, and no martial artist can defeat them. The leader's eyes were deep, and a thoughtful look appeared in his eyes. It was as if he was thinking back to a long time ago. As the descendant of the origin immortal treasury, the guardian of the treasury, and the leader of this group, he knew far more secrets than anyone else in the world. Far too many secrets had been lost in the flood of history, and far too many civilizations and creations had vanished in the passage of time. However, not everything would fade with time. There would always be some secrets that would be passed down, and they would continue to exist in unknown places. These draconic beasts were the products of that long-forgotten era. Their ferocity and brutality were existences that were terrifying and nightmarish even to the top martial artists that stood towering in the world. Pay for your greed, ignorance, and stupidity. This time, all of you will have a taste of the deepest terror. No one who enters this place will be able to come out alive. The leader muttered to himself. His gaze quickly turned fierce. It's about time. Throw down all the dragon god leaves and wake them up. Voila! One of the origin immortal protectors spread open his palm and crushed the jade-like leaves in his hand. Then, through the gaps between his fingers, they fell into the giant pit down below and drifted into the darkest depths. Meanwhile, deep underground, as Wang Chong was doing his best to resist the dragon beast's enormous power, the dragon beast opened its massive mouth, and a moment later, a scorching flame erupted from the darkness. The flame flooded the cave and swept toward Wang Chong. The surrounding temperature immediately soared to 6,000 or 7,000 degrees, perhaps even approaching 10,000 degrees. The surrounding cave creaked and began to crystallize. Even the air began to smoke, and the stellar energy in Wang Chong's body began to show signs of instability and evaporation. Not good. Alarmed, Wang Chong immediately shot forward, borrowing the dragon beast's enormous strength to shoot forward. With a backward slide, he immediately covered a distance of several dozen feet, increasing the distance between him and the dragon beast. But while Wang Chong was fast, the dragon beast was even faster. As Wang Chong used this momentum to retreat, the dragon beast appeared in front of Wang Chong like a ghost. Whoa. The dangerous aura reached its peak, and before Wang Chong could stabilize himself, a massive maw rapidly expanded in front of Wang Chong's eyes and bit down on his body. Those sharp teeth looked even sharper than swords and sabers. Wang Chong's heart chilled, and with no time to think, his dantian exploded as he used the great yin-yang art. Rumble! There was a flash of light, one yang and one yin, one sun and one moon. Two completely different energies of extreme yin and extreme hardness appeared, and they began to rapidly revolve around Wang Chong's hands. Boom! There was an earth-shattering noise, and the destructive energy that was enough to shatter heaven and earth rapidly burst out of Wang Chong's body and violently bombarded the body of the dragon beast that was 6 to 7 meters tall. However, something that shocked Wang Chong happened. The great yin-yang art was Wang Chong's most powerful unique skill. It gathered the power of extreme yin and extreme hardness, and even a mountain could be easily shattered. Even steel could be crushed into soft mud, or even shattered into powder. But when this great yin-yang art landed on the body of the dragon beast, it could only stop its body for a moment. In fact, Wang Chong could even sense that at least 70% of the power of this move flowed off the dragon beast's body like water, causing no harm at all. Breaking defense. In a flash, a thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind, and he instantly understood what was going on. It was like a bucket of ice water had been poured over his head, and Wang Chong's heart instantly turned icy cold. This behemoth was not only naturally massive, possessing strength surpassing that of a peak great general, but its body was also extremely strange, possessing an innate ability to break through defense. To a martial artist, this was their worst nightmare. At that moment, Wang Chong suddenly understood why those martial artists had died so silently. It wasn't that they hadn't tried to resist, but that their resistance had been like scratching an itch to this terrifying behemoth. Swish! Chapter 1479. Translator, Nyobo Studio Editor. Nyobo Studio. That sound was still ringing in his ears, but Wang Chong felt a sharp pain in his chest, as if his skin and flesh were being cut open. In that instant, Wang Chong's heart thumped wildly, and his body instinctively moved to the right. Boom! A dark shadow slammed heavily into the area 10 meters behind Wang Chong, shaking off a large section of the cave wall. At that moment, Wang Chong could clearly see what had happened. The thin blade-like object that shot through the void towards him was actually a palm-sized scale on the giant beast's body. What terrifying speed! Wang Chong's heart trembled. He had never imagined that the colossal beast's black scales could also be used as weapons, and that they were extremely fast. When he first heard that faint sound, it had felt like it was very far away, or at least some distance away. But in reality, the colossal beast's scales had already reached his body. If not for Wang Chong's intuition and instincts, he would have been cut in two by the dragon beast. This fellow is even more powerful than I imagined. A strong sense of dread welled up in Wang Chong's heart. He had just used the Heavenly Mandate battle armor not too long ago, and he would not be able to use it normally for at least 20 to 30 days. Without this powerful armor, it would be very difficult for Wang Chong to contend against this dragon beast with its heaven-defying physical strength. Whether it was its jaws, its claws, or its scales, they were all enough to cause great harm to an unprotected martial artist like Wang Chong. On the other side, Wang Chong's continuous resistance had clearly enraged the dragon beast. In the darkness, the pair of scarlet eyes glared at Wang Chong. Bzz. With a flash of light, the enormous dragon beast quickly disappeared. Boom! The place where Wang Chong had been standing collapsed, kicking up a large cloud of dust. The hard rocks underground couldn't withstand the dragon beast's attack at all. However, the dragon beast's determined attack still failed in the end. Seeing that its attack had missed, the dragon beast did not hesitate to pounce at Wang Chong once more. But this time, Wang Chong changed his strategy. Wang Chong's body flickered, and 3 afterimages appeared around the dragon beast at the same time. Just as the dragon beast's claws were about to slam down, Wang Chong dodged the dragon beast's attack by a hair's breadth. At the same time, 2 milky white sword cheese in his hands shot out fiercely towards the dragon beast's eyes. Art of God and Demon Obliteration. At this moment, Wang Chong used the top-class sword art that he had inherited from So Yong-sun, the war god of the Tang dynasty. Humans had the greatest advantage over beasts in skill and intelligence, and martial arts were the greatest inventions of humans. The best way to deal with a creature like the dragon beast, which was even stronger than a great general, was not to fight it head-on, but to use skill to bypass its sharpness and attack its weakest points. This dragon had a strong ability to break through the defense. No matter how powerful an attack was, the effect would be greatly reduced. However, no matter how powerful a dragon was, its eyes, mouth, and orifices were all vulnerable parts that could not be protected. Wang Chong's idea was correct, but the reality was completely different from what Wang Chong had imagined. Bang! Wang Chong's sword chi struck down, but the dragon beast's eyes did not go blind. The dragon beast's eyes closed, a transparent layer of glass covering its scarlet eyes. Wang Chong's sword chi had no effect at all. Not only that, Wang Chong's attack had thoroughly enraged the dragon beast. A beast claw covered in fine scales rapidly grew in size before Wang Chong's eyes. At the same time, the dragon beast opened its mouth and spat out a stream of lava-like flames. This time, the flames were more intense and scorching than any of the previous times. The moment the flames appeared, they filled the entire cave, and even the dragon beast's body was engulfed in flames. Not even Wang Chong dared to be careless in the face of these scorching flames. The dragon beast's flames gave him a very strange feeling. It was somewhat similar to the fire of Mara and the fire of Jubai that he had absorbed from the black-robed man, but their nature was completely different. Even so, Wang Chong did not panic. This is my chance. I'll take this opportunity to attack its insides. Although the dragon beast's flames were powerful, they had no effect on Wang Chong's mental strength. Wang Chong could clearly sense where its mouth was. Wang Chong opened his palm, and the sword dropped by the warrior on the ground immediately flew into his palm. Wang Chong shook his hand, and the sword immediately pierced through the flames at lightning speed, heading straight for the dragon beast's bloody mouth. Warriors who were able to pass through so many obstacles and enter the underground were not ordinary people. Naturally, their swords were not ordinary either. Although there was still a gap between them and the Wuzi steel sword, there was no doubt about their sharpness. Clang! The sword pierced through the flames, and only a crisp sound of metal breaking could be heard. The flames that filled the sky suddenly receded, and in an instant, the dragon beast's figure was once again revealed. At that moment, Wang Chong clearly saw the dragon beast's mouth close, and that bloody mouth was actually biting the sword that Wang Chong had shot out. This sword, which was forged with top-grade steel and had a large number of inscriptions attached to it, was actually bitten in an instant and split into 2 pieces. Seeing this scene, Wang Chong's heart was filled with awe. No other beast could do this. This giant beast's instincts were extremely strong. Moreover, Wang Chong had a strong feeling that this giant beast was far from being as simple as an ordinary beast. Wang Chong felt that this giant beast seemed to have received some kind of training from a warrior. Otherwise, there was no way to explain how this giant beast could react so quickly. Boom! As he was thinking, Wang Chong felt an intense sense of danger. His body swayed as he immediately retreated. In a flash, the massive dragon beast's paw slammed into the place where Wang Chong had been standing a moment ago. This won't do. This giant beast's abilities are specialized in restraining martial artists. The duty of these beasts should be to protect the Origin Immortal Treasury. I can't stay here for too long. These thoughts flitted through Wang Chong's mind. In truth, Wang Chong's strength was not much weaker than the dragon beast's, but the dragon beast's powerful stellar energy made it impossible for Wang Chong to easily kill it. Instead of staying here, I should leave as quickly as possible and find the treasury. With this thought, Wang Chong quickly chose a branch cave and vanished into it. Explosions rang out behind him. The dragon beast seemed to have locked onto Wang Chong and was in hot pursuit. The underground caves extended in all directions, and in the blink of an eye, 3 branches had appeared in front of him. With a thought, Wang Chong divided himself into 3, each of which he entered. But to his surprise, Wang Chong's move had no effect at all. The dragon beast didn't even hesitate to choose one of the caves and pursue Wang Chong. Wait, this behemoth doesn't rely on its eyes to identify its prey. It can smell the stellar energy of a martial artist. Wang Chong immediately understood. The dragon beast's scarlet eyes were particularly striking in the darkness. Wang Chong thought that the dragon beast relied on its eyes to track its prey, so he used the doppelganger technique to divide himself into 3. But just now, Wang Chong clearly saw that when the dragon beast faced the 3 caves and the 3 doppelgangers, it chose the right one without a second thought. Clearly, the dragon beast didn't rely on its eyes to track its prey. And if it didn't rely on its eyes, then it could only rely on the martial artist's stellar energy. As this thought flashed through his mind, Wang Chong quickly came up with an idea. Rumble! The sound of the cave collapsing behind him and the dragon beast's roars and cries rang out incessantly, and it was getting closer and closer. The dragon beast seemed to have its eyes on Wang Chong, unwilling to let go. And Wang Chong's mind was spinning rapidly, but he remained calm. A moment later, another branching cave appeared in front of him. This time, Wang Chong was much more cautious. There was a flash of light, and Wang Chong quickly divided himself into 2. Unlike before, Wang Chong concentrated a large amount of stellar energy on his doppelganger. At the same time, he contracted his dantian and sealed off his acupoints. Aside from the meridians in his legs, he sealed off all the meridians in his body. The flow of stellar energy was almost completely still, and his aura was reduced to an extreme. After doing all this, Wang Chong's body swayed, and his doppelganger and real body simultaneously landed in 2 relatively large caves, disappearing in a flash. The dragon beast's violent roar, filled with endless desire for destruction and slaughter, resounded through heaven and earth, causing the underground cave to tremble as if it would collapse at any moment. But in the next moment, there was an earth-shattering change. There was a flash of light, and the dragon beast directly chased after Wang Chong's doppelganger. As expected. Sensing the change on the other side, there was no longer any doubt in Wang Chong's mind. Xiu xiu xiu. Wang Chong swiftly moved, rapidly heading into the depths of the cave. However, just as Wang Chong emerged from a cave and was heading towards the next branching cave, there was suddenly a sudden change. Without the slightest warning, a faint sound of something tearing through the air suddenly came from above. This aura seemed to have been lying dormant for a long time, waiting for Wang Chong to appear, and only now did it erupt. If it were anyone else at such a close distance, they would definitely be caught off guard and quickly fall for the attack. However, Wang Chong did not panic in the slightest. Pung, in a flash, Wang Chong flipped his palm over, and with a momentum that seemed to support the heavens, he directly met the aura above his head. Boom, boom, boom. The two palms collided, and a majestic gust of stellar energy suddenly erupted from Wang Chong's body, fiercely colliding with the extremely soft, extremely dark and extremely turbid aura. In an instant, a muffled groan came from above. The figure swayed, somersaulted, and landed in a cave above Wang Chong's head. The moment the figure's feet touched the ground, his body staggered, and he could not stand steadily, stumbling a few steps back. Ha! At the same time, a surprised voice sounded in his ear, but it came from a completely different direction than the figure from before. Brat, it's you! At the same time, a familiar voice sounded. Wang Chong was startled, and he looked in the direction of the voice, only to see that the opposite cave was crisscrossed, and in one of the caves, about 20 meters away from him, a familiar figure with a malicious gaze was staring at him in shock. Chapter 1480. The Black Yin Ancestor. Wang Chong's heart thumped as he immediately recognized this figure. Wang Chong had never imagined that he would encounter him in such a large cave and such a complicated underground passage. Hey, isn't this Zhang Wenfu's disciple? I only wanted to deal with a few small fish, but I didn't expect to catch a big fish. Kid, since you've delivered yourself to my door, you can't blame anyone else. The myriad ghost ancestor also spoke at the same time. Your master has committed all sorts of crimes and is utterly devoid of conscience. This can be considered karma. Kid, accept your fate. The Bone Devil ancestor said, his expression icy. The three top-class experts of the Five Ancestor Alliance had appeared in front of Wang Chong at the same time. In a flash, Wang Chong grimaced, his heart sinking into the water. The Black Yin Ancestor, Myriad Ghost Ancestor, and Bone Devil Ancestor were all experts of the evil path. Each of them was an existence of the same generation as his master, the Evil Emperor. Whether it was in terms of cultivation, reaction time, or fighting skill, they had all reached the pinnacle of cultivation. Any one of these three was a top-class expert, enough to pose a major threat to others, and now all three of them had appeared at the same time. Wang Chong's scalp went numb as he sensed an unprecedented danger. From a certain perspective, it even surpassed the metal storm and the dragon beasts. So it's you. You're dead for sure. This is what they mean by choosing the gates of hell instead of taking the path to heaven. Two voices resounded in Wang Chong's ears as the Five Ancestor Alliance elders and Imperial Martial and Saint Martial experts of the evil path emerged from the other caves and tightly surrounded Wang Chong. Bang! A massive boom came from behind him, and at the same time, 20 to 30 meters behind Wang Chong, the ceiling of the cave caved in. 5 black-robed elders of the Five Ancestor Alliance burst through the rock and dropped down from an adjacent cave. Our Five Ancestor Alliance has mobilized all our forces this time, and 3 of our ancestors have personally come. Even if the Origin Immortal came, he still wouldn't be able to escape. This brat is doomed. Kill the chicken to warn the monkey. We can use him to show the world the consequences of offending our Five Ancestor Alliance. Even the demonic emperor's disciple must die. Streams of vital energy shot out from all directions, firmly locking onto Wang Chong. This time, it was truly an inescapable net. There was no escape to the heavens and no door to the earth. On the other side, Shen Yin, Wan Ge, and Guimo sneered, looking at Wang Chong as if he was a dead man. In the encirclement of the Five Ancestor Alliance, with their 3 ancestors and many evil path experts standing guard, There was probably no one in the world who could escape from their hands. Not even the demonic Emperor Zhang Wenfu would dare to say such a thing, much less his disciple. Kill him. First kill the young one, and then kill the old one. With a cold sneer, the Black Yin ancestor immediately issued the order to execute them. Following this order, the atmosphere in the cavern immediately tensed up to the extreme, swords drawn and bows drawn. It seemed like Wang Chong was about to fall into the encirclement of the Five Ancestor Alliance and die. At this moment, Wang Chong's roar was like a clap of thunder that stopped the crowd. Hey, brat, do you have any last words? For the sake of Zhang Wenfu, I can reluctantly agree. The Black Yin ancestor playfully said. The evil path experts around the Black Yin ancestor roared with laughter. But even so, the encirclement around Wang Chong did not relax. On the contrary, it only tightened. Black Yin ancestor, you're overthinking things. Wang Chong suddenly laughed, his mind rapidly turning. The one who laughs in the end laughs the best. It's not even the final moment yet, so you're all getting happy a little too early. Wang Chong's expression was calm and composed, not the slightest sign of panic. Interesting. Even at a time like this, you still want to play some tricks? If my guess is correct, you, your master, and the other old fellow should have been separated when the underground suction force erupted. Otherwise, given your master's personality, he would definitely not have been separated from you. Since things have come to this, you should just accept your fate. The Black Yin ancestor sinisterly chuckled, apparently having seen through everything. The evil energy in his body rumbled as majestic stellar energy gathered in his palms. He was about to unleash a lightning-fast strike to take down Wang Chong. Heh, Black Yin ancestor, you're celebrating too early. Do you really think you've got me? Why don't you turn around and see what's behind you? To his surprise, Wang Chong sneered, showing no fear at all. Brat, don't waste your energy. At a time like this, do you think you can fool me with this kind of trick? The Black Yin ancestor cruelly chuckled, not falling for Wang Chong's trick. As one of the titans of the martial arts world, he had seen every aspect of the world. Wang Chong's bluff had no effect on him. Old Five, don't waste words with him. Just kill him. At that moment, the Bone Devil Patriarch spoke up. His eyes were cold and sinister as he stared at the distant Wang Chong. Boom! He stomped his foot, causing the world to sway. Black smoke roiled and evil energy surged for a radius of several dozen zhang. Countless demons and monsters appeared, shrieking and shrieking. In the time it takes for a spark to fly off a piece of flint, an inhuman roar, ferocious and domineering, that was filled with an endless desire to kill and destroy, suddenly erupted from behind the three of them. However, before they could react, a terrifying aura pounced towards the three of them like a ferocious beast. What's that? The Black Yin ancestor, the Myriad Ghost ancestor, and the Bone Devil ancestor were stunned and hurriedly turned their heads. But before they could clearly see what was going on behind them, a roaring flame suddenly erupted from the cave behind them. In the blink of an eye, it was only a few feet from the trio. And within this flame, there seemed to be something extremely dreadful lunging at the trio. The three were shocked, but there was no time to think. The Black Yin ancestor, the Myriad Ghost ancestor, and the Bone Devil ancestor all attacked. Together with the surrounding experts of the evil path, they attacked the sea of fire behind them. Great Black Dragon Art. Myriad Ghosts Pilgrimage Great Yin Art. Bone Devil's Descent. When the three of them joined hands and displayed the three famous evil Dao techniques, their auras were enough to shock the heavens and make the gods and ghosts cry. It was enough to make any martial artist pale with fright. And in truth, their attacks were effective, boom boom boom. Stellar energy shot out in all directions as explosions rang out incessantly. In the blink of an eye, countless attacks rained down on the sea of fire. But in the next moment, a heaven-shaking rumble rang out as a 7-meter-tall monster charged out of the sea of flames. Like a meteor, it smashed into the profound Yin, Myriad Ghost, and Bone Devil Patriarchs, as well as the evil path experts in front of it. In the time it took for a spark to fly off a piece of flint, screams rang out incessantly. The weaker corrupt experts standing next to the three patriarchs didn't even have time to dodge before they were engulfed by the raging flames. They screamed as their stellar energy exploded and they were burned to ashes. As powerful as the mysterious Een ancestor, the myriad ghost ancestor, and the bone devil ancestor, they were also struck by the giant beast that charged out of the flames. The three of them were sent flying like kites with their strings cut. What kind of monster is this? This attack was so sudden that the black Een ancestor didn't even have time to use the black dragon art before he was sent flying. The black Een ancestor paled in fear, and the myriad ghost ancestor and the bone devil ancestor were just as shocked. No one in the martial arts world could take the combined attack of the three of them and so many five Ancestor Alliance experts at the same time, but this monster was completely unharmed. This was simply inconceivable. Not only that, the black Een ancestor sensed that the power of his attack on the monster had been parted like a wave, unable to have any real effect. This characteristic, coupled with the monster's massive size and terrifying strength, was enough to make one despair. Roar. Chapter 1481. Stellar Energy Breaker. This beast can ignore stellar energy. There's no way to defeat it. The black Een ancestor's body trembled and his scalp went numb. He had almost instantly determined that his group was no match for this beast. Martial artists were most proud of their stellar energy, and if a beast had stellar energy breaker power, it was not something that martial artists could deal with. A normal martial artist would not believe this and would charge forward to test the strength of this beast, but the black Een ancestor would not. He had a keen intuition, a sense of danger. It was precisely through this keen intuition that the black Een ancestor had managed to survive in the treacherous evil path. Step by step, he had climbed to the peak of the martial path from a newcomer of the evil path, ultimately becoming an existence feared and revered by all. The black Een ancestor simply did not possess this sort of defiance and courage that a great demon lord like him possessed. If the black Een ancestor could sense the strangeness of this beast, how could the myriad ghost ancestor and the bone devil ancestor not? As the black Een ancestor fled, the two of them also began to flee. But unlike the black Een ancestor, the bone devil ancestor was still the leader. Even as he fled, he did not forget to wave his sleeve, unleashing a torrent of evil stellar energy at the behemoth behind him, helping the other disciples of the five Ancestor Alliance escape. This beast can stellar energy breaker. The bone devil ancestor's voice resounded in everyone's ears. The five Ancestor Alliance, which had been holding the upper hand just a moment ago, was instantly thrown into disarray. Three ancestors were fleeing while countless evil path experts had been killed. Panic and chaos reigned. All the five Ancestor Alliance experts paled. Infected by the fleeing of the three ancestors, they began to flee like beasts. At this moment, the only one who was able to maintain his composure was Wang Chong. You still want to run at a time like this? Black Een, myriad ghost, bone devil, you three old demons, you've already come, so why are you still running? Wang Chong laughed. His laughter was filled with mockery. Naturally, it was that dragon beast that had scared the three old devils of the evil path, Xian Yin, Wan Gui, and Guimo into a frenzy. Only the dragon beast, which had the power to break through Gang Qi and was not afraid of Gang Qi, could defeat Xian Yin, Wan Gui, and Bone Demon on its own. The three of them could only blame themselves for being too arrogant. They actually wanted to surround and kill Wang Chong and use the opportunity to deal with the demonic Emperor Zhang Wenfu. Wang Chong had just used his doppelganger to lure the dragon beast away. At this time, he simply took a detour and went behind the three of them to launch a sudden attack. The great ancestor of the mysterious dark sect actually thought that he was fooling him. The result was obvious. But since the black Een ancestor wanted to act against Wang Chong wouldn't let him off easy. A moment later, Wang Chong looked at the three ancestors of the five Ancestor Alliance, his lips curling into a wicked smile. This bizarre smile made the hearts of the black Een ancestor and the others thump. But before they could think any further, Wang Chong's body swayed, and as the three fled, he flew straight toward them. Stay here for me. Great destruction art. Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong brought his palms together and used the great destruction art of the great yin-yang heaven creation art, an art that was even stronger than the great yin-yang art. Rumble. The space around him darkened, and at the same time, a destructive energy howled out of Wang Chong's body and slammed into the space in front of the three ancestors. Even space itself shattered in the face of this destructive energy. The ground 10,000 meters below shuddered as if on the verge of collapse. Brat, you dare! The Black Een ancestor, Myriad Ghost ancestor, and Bone Devil ancestor instantly grimaced. The strongest of them, the Bone Devil ancestor, had a nasty grimace. The Great Destruction art was the supreme technique that demonic Emperor Zhang Wenfu had used to intimidate the world, and the three of them naturally recognized it. But not even Zhang Wenfu could single-handedly fight against the three of them. Wang Chong's goal was sinister. His goal was not to defeat them, but to stop them and use the behemoth to deal with them. Boom boom boom. In the blink of an eye, the three of them attacked simultaneously. Evil energy, Yin energy, and corpse energy surged toward Wang Chong from all directions. The clash of stellar energy immediately pulverized Wang Chong's attack. But Wang Chong had also achieved his goal. A roar, accompanied by blazing flames, came from behind them, pouncing straight at the three of them. In that instant, all three of them were enraged to the extreme. Brat, this old man will definitely kill you. Their roars were immediately followed by the sounds of intense fighting. In a battle between experts, every second mattered. In just a few moments of obstruction, the dragon beast had caught up. I wish you good luck. Wang Chong heartily laughed. His body drew back like a bowstring, and then his limbs exerted strength as he shot backward like an arrow, swiftly leaving the cave. It is impolite not to reciprocate. Given the reputation, strength, and experience of the three ancestors, the dragon beast should not have been able to kill them. However, this was enough to make them suffer. What comes next is a true massacre. Wang Chong retreated into the cave. Just like before, he withdrew his aura so that he would not attract the slightest attention. In the midst of this group of arrogant and unrestrained evil path martial artists, Wang Chong was as weak as a firefly, so he naturally could not attract the dragon beast's attention. This was precisely why Wang Chong had dared to draw the dragon beast over. If he did not exterminate all the 5 Ancestor Alliance members, the dragon beast would never come looking for him. Damn it. Stop it. Careful. Behind him, explosions, curses, and screams came one after the other, and then screams. They only have themselves to blame. I'll slowly play with this beast. After listening for a few moments, Wang Chong's body swayed, and then he headed off in another direction. This beast could lock onto a martial artist's stellar energy, and the 5 Ancestor Alliance would find it difficult to escape unless they paid a heavy price. This was what they deserved. After advancing for several thousand meters, another mournful roar suddenly came from the front, accompanied by a series of miserable screams. What's going on? Wang Chong paused, a hint of shock in his eyes. This roar was extremely similar to that of the beast Wang Chong had encountered, but it was also different. Could there be 2 beasts here? As this thought flitted through his mind, Wang Chong grimaced. Just one beast in this underground cavern was enough to pose a massive threat to all the martial artists here. Not even the 3 ancestors of the 5 Ancestor Alliance and so many experts had been able to stop it. If one beast was already so difficult to deal with, one could easily imagine what would happen to them if there was another. Just when Wang Chong was beginning to feel that something was wrong, another dragon beast bellowed. Wang Chong instantly paled. How could this be? Could there be more than one beast here? Even someone as daring as Wang Chong couldn't help but feel an intense danger. If there were more than one beast in this cavern, then all the martial artists here, including himself, would be in danger. Just as he was deep in thought, a series of footsteps suddenly came from all directions, accompanied by a series of screams. They were quickly heading in his direction. Boom! In a flash of light, 2 blazing flames appeared in the dark passageway and vanished in a flash. When they reappeared, they were coming from 2 different directions, the positions of the flames constantly changing while the screams grew louder and louder. Through the flashes of light, Wang Chong could clearly see countless people charging in his direction. "They're coming! Go, hurry! Bastard, why did the Origin Immortal Lord leave behind such monsters? It's over, it's over! I shouldn't have come down here. Bastard, don't block my way! Get out of my way!" Panicked cries filled the air, and in just a few seconds, 30 to 40 pale-faced martial artists were fleeing for their lives, their faces brimming with fear. These martial artists had undoubtedly entered the cavern after Wang Chong, but they had all gathered together in this complex cavern. A few moments later, the blazing dragon flames once more appeared in the cavern, and in the blazing light, Wang Chong once more saw the familiar and massive figure of the dragon beast. The two dragons stood in two different caves, far away from each other, like two ferocious beasts. Their scarlet eyes exuded a destructive aura in the endless darkness. While Wang Chong was still wondering if one of the two dragon beasts was the same one he had encountered before, another roar came from behind him. Wang Chong instantly paled. "Go!" Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong and all the martial artists behind him began to flee. Almost at the same time, the gigantic beasts roared and 3 waves of scorching dragon flames swept across the underground cavern, flowing in all directions like rivers and lakes. "Aya!" Screams filled the air as the martial artists were caught off guard, the blazing dragon flame erupting from their backs and causing them to explode. The surging waves of energy also blew away some of the martial artists who hadn't been able to flee in time. "Save me! Save me!" A martial artist was thrown to the ground by the explosion of dragon flames. His hands were outstretched, his eyes filled with fear as he looked forward. But in the blink of an eye, a massive beast claw as thick as a stone pillar stomped down. The martial artist didn't even have time to scream before he was pulverized by the dragon beast. Flames constantly flickered in the darkness as the 3 dragon beasts chased after the martial artists while breathing fire. Anyone who could not escape in time was easily killed by the dragon beast. Although there were many martial artists in the cavern, not a single one of them was a match for the dragon beasts. Waves of horrifying screams reverberated in the cave for a long time, lingering for a long time. Chapter 1482. "Milord, all the dragon beasts have been mobilized. We're currently moving them into the depths of the pit as planned." One of the guardians of the Origin Immortal Treasury suddenly said. Although they had not ventured deep into the ground, they seemed to know everything that had happened to Wang Chong's group. "No matter what, we have to break them up. We can't let them work together. The dragon beasts alone won't be enough. It's about time. Pass on my order. Release those things in the pit." At this moment, the leader of the guardians suddenly spoke. His eyes were emotionless as he stared into the pitch-black pit. "Yes." From the surface of the pit all the way down through a distance of 16,000 to 17,000 meters, following the order of the leader, an invisible ripple spread out from the bottom of the pitch-dark pit. The pit was quiet, without the slightest ripple of energy. After what seemed like both a second and like countless eons, there was a flash of light. A weak light like a firefly slowly flew out of the darkness. After flying several hundred meters, it seemed like it had been startled awake from a dream. The weak light suddenly blazed, and in the blink of an eye, it shone brightly. Then, its speed increased, and like a meteor, it entered the huge underground cave. In the cavern, Wang Chong had concealed his aura as much as possible as he fled. Screams could be heard from behind him as all the martial artists in the rear were slaughtered. Wang Chong's entire body tensed up as an intense sense of danger washed over him like a massive wave. Wang Chong's greatest reliance was the energy condensation pearl in his body, but no matter how much energy the pearl stored, it would quickly vanish under the attacks of the 3 dragon beasts. Once that happened, only death would await Wang Chong. Where is it? Just which direction should I run in? Wang Chong's eyes scanned the surroundings like lightning. In this underground cave, the network was everywhere, and it was easy to get lost. If one was not careful, he might even unknowingly send himself into the mouth of a giant beast. Moreover, the spiritual restriction that was set up in the entire underground cavern rendered the spiritual power that Wang Chong was so proud of completely useless. Under such circumstances, it was extremely difficult to determine the correct direction. I can only use sound as a substitute for spiritual force probing. Wang Chong thought to himself. Mind power was a means of detection, and so was sound waves. It was just like how bats could use sound to locate themselves, but it was not as useful as mind power. In the next moment, with a thought, Wang Chong heard all the sounds around him. The roars of wild beasts, the blood-curdling screams of martial artists, the explosions of air waves, and the echoes from the thousands of caves. All of this was sent into Wang Chong's mind, and through his immense psychic energy, he was able to rearrange the information in his mind. This was much slower than Wang Chong's formation model in the Origin Immortal formation, but it was beginning to show its effects. Wang Chong had originally been oblivious to this complex network, but now, with Wang Chong at the center, he was slowly drawing out the complex network of caves in Wang Chong's mind and spreading out. Although he still couldn't explore the entire underground network, at least he wasn't blind anymore. But it's those bugs. It's over. We're all going to die here. At this moment, a shrill scream suddenly came from an unexpected place. Buzz. Stunned, Wang Chong raised his head and saw that in another direction, another group of martial artists was rushing toward him, their faces stricken with fear. Behind them, balls of golden light the size of fists floated in the air and chased after them like meteors chasing after the moon. As these silver halos pursued them, Wang Chong immediately heard a familiar voice. Stellar-piercing beetles. Wang Chong's body trembled as he immediately recognized these terrifying beetles that, like the dragon beasts, possessed the ability to pierce through stellar-piercing beetles. Many top-class experts had died to these stellar-piercing beetles in the Origin Immortal formation. Wang Chong had never imagined that he would run into them again in these dark caves. But unlike the Origin Immortal formation, these stellar-piercing beetles were larger, stronger, and more aggressive. When it rains, it pours. The three dragon beasts had already put all the martial artists underground in grave danger, and now these nightmarish stellar-piercing beetles had appeared. Even Wang Chong couldn't help but widen his eyes and feel his heart go numb as he sensed the aura of death that he had never felt before. 3 dragon beasts and a horde of high-level stellar-piercing beetles. No martial artist could possibly survive such an attack. Wang Chong's heart tightened, and he immediately used a movement technique to charge deeper into the caves. Without the heavenly mandate battle armor, not even Wang Chong could stop these beetles. Buzz. 1 cavern, 2 caverns. Countless caverns lit up with fire. Thousands of stellar-piercing beetles appeared in these caves and began to charge toward Wang Chong's group. At almost the same time, the dragon beasts roared as the other 3 dragon beasts appeared in the caves behind them. Together with the stellar-piercing beetles, they hunted down all the martial artists in the caves. Danger followed them like a shadow. All the martial artists at the back were caught up by the dragon beasts and stellar-piercing beetles and killed one by one. The screams of death were so shrill that it made one's hair stand on end. As Wang Chong fled, he was constantly paying attention to his surroundings and the cave. In this sort of situation, Wang Chong did not dare to be careless in the slightest. Something's wrong. Wang Chong's body trembled as a thought flashed through his mind. After some time, he sensed that something was very wrong with these dragon beasts and stellar-piercing beetles. These creatures don't seem to be trying to kill, but to drive them away. The dragon beasts and stellar-piercing beetles would never be so restrained as to only chase down the martial artists at the back. The stellar-piercing beetles were one thing, but Wang Chong had personally experienced the speed of the dragon beasts. Not many martial artists could match their speed. And these dragon beasts had never charged into the crowd to begin a massacre. Their intention to drive them away was far more obvious than to kill them. It's those people hiding behind the curtains. Wang Chong's mind trembled as he recalled the mysterious faction controlling the formation in an attempt to exterminate all the martial artists in the Origin Immortal formation. Even with the power of the dragon beasts and stellar-piercing beetles, they had still been able to control them. This was clearly not because they were soft-hearted, but because they had a greater plan. As this thought passed through his mind, Wang Chong immediately sensed an even greater danger. But in the short time available, not even someone of Wang Chong's abilities could find a good solution. Aya! As he fled, he suddenly felt a stabbing pain in his abdomen, and the stellar energy in Wang Chong's body fell into disarray. Not good. I've used up too much stellar energy, and my meridians are starting to fall into disorder. Wang Chong staggered and almost fell to the ground. Wang Chong's cultivation defect had still not been cured, and the appearance of the energy condensation pearl had only managed to alleviate the injuries in his body. It had not been able to treat the root of the problem. The continuous battles with the Black Yin ancestor and the others, and the use of the Great Yin Yang art and Great Destruction art had placed a heavy burden on Wang Chong's already disordered meridians. Although Wang Chong had long ago known that if he did not find the origin immortal art and resolve the root of the problem, his cultivation defect would only worsen, Wang Chong had never imagined that it would come so quickly. Moreover, it happened at such a critical time. Damn it! Why did it have to happen now? Wang Chong's face was ghastly pale, cold sweat pouring down his forehead, and he couldn't help but slow down. But in this short period of time, not only did the pain in his abdomen not lessen, it seemed to grow more and more intense. Even worse was that under the effects of the chaotic energy, the more important governing and conception meridians in his body were beginning to twitch. But this was not the end. As Wang Chong slowed down, a savage roar came from overhead. At some point, an enormous figure had bypassed the martial artists and emerged from one of the caves, appearing 20 to 30 meters in front of Wang Chong. Its scarlet eyes were blinding as it stared at the weakened martial artist Wang Chong. Wang Chong grimaced and his heart sank. Blessings never came in pairs, and Wang Chong had never imagined that he would be targeted by a dragon beast at a time like this. Swish! At that moment, time seemed to have stopped. It was as if only Wang Chong and the 6 to 7 meter tall dragon beast were left in the world. The brutal ancient beast glared at Wang Chong. Wang Chong could even see it sneeze at him, and 2 wisps of hot smoke came out of its nostrils. Buzz! At that moment, Wang Chong saw the dragon beast move its claws slightly, and its originally loose muscles suddenly tightened. In an instant, the sense of crisis in Wang Chong's heart quickly intensified. Life and death were decided in an instant. Boom! The earth shook. At that moment, the huge dragon beast stomped its feet heavily, and in an instant, it disappeared on the spot like a phantom. At the same time, Wang Chong smelled a suffocating, terrifying aura of death. Chapter 1483. Warning! User has encountered an ancient dragon beast. This is a powerful creature left behind from the Yellow Emperor's era. These ancient creatures hide obscure mysteries of the world. For escaping the dragon beast's attack, user will be rewarded with 10,000 points of destiny energy. For killing the dragon beast, user will be rewarded with 100,000 points of destiny energy. For taming the dragon beast, user will be rewarded with 500,000 points of destiny energy. At this moment, Wang Chong's mind blazed with light. The Stone of Destiny had issued a mission that caught even Wang Chong off guard. What? The Yellow Emperor's era? Upon hearing these words, Wang Chong was shocked. He knew that this giant beast had an extraordinary background, but Wang Chong had never imagined that this giant beast would actually be related to the Yellow Emperor. A giant beast that could survive for such a long time was beyond his imagination. But Wang Chong had no time to ponder this. Death was imminent. Although he could not see the dragon beast's figure, Wang Chong knew that given the dragon beast's speed, its true body had probably already reached him. Just as Wang Chong was about to die under the dragon beast's claws, rumble. Suddenly, the earth exploded, and Wang Chong vanished into thin air like a ghost. This was so sudden that even a creature like the dragon beast, which did not have much intelligence, was startled. Its claws fiercely resisted the inertia of its charge, and it turned around. The place where Wang Chong had been standing was empty, leaving behind only a human-sized hole that led to another place underground. Roar! In an instant, the dragon beast immediately understood, and it let out a furious roar that shook the heavens. The caverns here extended in all directions. In the instant that the dragon beast had lunged, Wang Chong had been quick-witted, gathering all the energy in his body to forcefully break through the rock and enter the other cavern beneath his feet. This seemed simple, but it was no easy feat if he had not grasped the layout of the entire cavern and had precise control over the entire underground cavern. He would not have been able to do this. The rock layer in some places was extremely thick. Forcefully breaking through the rock layer would only bring about one's own humiliation. They would sink into the ground and be unable to move. The gigantic draconic beast obviously understood Wang Chong's trick. It suddenly roared angrily and unleashed its tyrannical strength. Just like Wang Chong, it broke through the rock stratum and fiercely rushed down. Draconic beasts were extremely sensitive to earth energy. Once targeted by it, death was certain. Just as the draconic beast was about to break through the rock stratum and enter the cave where Wang Chong was hiding, things developed in a completely different way. Rumble! There was a flash of light, and the draconic beast, which weighed 6 to 7 tons, immediately appeared in the cave that Wang Chong was in. However, in the next moment, before it could stand firm, the ground collapsed, and the draconic beast fell directly to the next level. Go! Wang Chong reacted extremely quickly. Without even thinking, he immediately forced himself to flee forward. As he fled, he split off his doppelgangers to go in another direction, luring the draconic beast over. Cold sweat poured down his forehead. It was only a short distance, but Wang Chong had almost exhausted all of his strength. Wang Chong constantly changed his position in the underground cavern, entering from one cavern to another in order to shake off the draconic beast's pursuit. However, Wang Chong knew that all of this was not a permanent solution. Being caught by the draconic beast was only a matter of time. I have to find a way to shake off the draconic beast. My internal injuries are worsening, and I won't be able to hold on for much longer. Wang Chong thought to himself. Roars rang out all around him, and the cries of martial artists rang out incessantly. However, the draconic beast seemed to have locked onto the scent of earth energy on his body. It seemed like it would not give up until it achieved its goal. Boom! An intense explosion came from the distance. The draconic beast had finally caught up to Wang Chong's doppelganger and smashed it apart with a swipe of its claw. In Wang Chong's perception, the draconic beast's aura was like a storm, passing through the caverns and heading toward him. In this complex network of caverns, the draconic beast, which only focused on earth energy and had a keen sense of smell like a hunting dog, had a far better understanding of the terrain than the martial artists here. Just where should I go? Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil. His internal injuries were worsening, and if he didn't leave the battle and stop, his internal injuries would only worsen. But at this moment, the draconic beast and the horde of stellar-piercing beetles were getting closer and closer. All of these factors made it impossible for Wang Chong to stop. Wang Chong continued to gather information from these sounds, further constructing the network of caverns in his mind. It's over there. Suddenly, a sound wave came back to him, and Wang Chong rejoiced at this information. His body swayed as he gathered his energy and began to fly toward an unnoticed branch of the cave. I'm here. A few moments later, the cavern narrowed 20 to 30 meters in front of Wang Chong, revealing a small cavern around 1.5 meters wide. The cavern was pitch black and empty, but in Wang Chong's eyes, it was like he had been given a new lease of life. The draconic beast's body was huge. It was 6 to 7 meters tall when it stood up. The cave in front of them was about 1.5 meters tall. Although it was not small, for the draconic beast's huge body, it was like a mouse hole. The draconic beast's body simply couldn't fit into such a small cavern. As long as he could, Wang Chong would be able to shake off the draconic beast's pursuit. In that instant, Wang Chong's eyes lit up, and without thinking, he rushed toward the small cavern. However, in the next moment, something unexpected happened. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Large pieces of rock and soil suddenly fell from the front, followed by a huge shadow the size of a small mountain falling from the sky, between Wang Chong and the cavern. The pair of scarlet eyes were extremely cold, and the killing intent in them could even freeze one's bone marrow. And Wang Chong's eyes also darkened at this moment. On the other side, the sudden appearance of the draconic beast had cut off all of Wang Chang's life. The stellar energy in Wang Chang's body was in disorder, and it was impossible for him to escape with all his strength. And that small cavern. If he didn't kill the draconic beast, it was impossible to get through. Rumble, in the blink of an eye, the draconic beast squatted down and exerted strength in its limbs. Like a cannonball, it suddenly shot out, pouncing toward Wang Chang. Its body was still in the air when it opened its giant mouth, and a monstrous wave of scorching dragon flames immediately filled the entire cavern. Seeing that Wang Chang was about to die under the draconic beast's attack, the next moment, Wang Chang's pupils shrank, and his eyes became incomparably determined. At this moment, not only did he not retreat to avoid the draconic beast's attack, but he also leaped forward, his center of gravity on the ground, and shot out like a spirit python, pouncing toward the draconic beast. In a flash, a purple flame shot out from Wang Chang's body, turning into a shield that enveloped his entire body. And Wang Chang's body was as thin as a piece of paper. His back was close to the ground, and he brushed past the draconic beast's belly. Indistinctly, there was the sound of a sharp blade cutting through flesh. Wang Chang seemed to have taken out something and cut open the draconic beast's entire belly. Boom! Accompanied by a loud noise, Wang Chang rushed under the draconic beast in a dangerous way and slid into the cavern that was about 1.5 meters wide behind the draconic beast. I did it! Wang Chang's body jerked up from the ground, and he suddenly looked at the woozy steel dagger in his hand. The dagger, which was less than a foot long, was dripping with blood, and thick blood flowed down from the tip of the blade. This was the blood of the draconic beast. When Wang Chang's injuries acted up in the mansion, he went berserk and fell into a coma. He was taken away by his master, and all his weapons and armors were thrown into the mansion. Only this short woozy steel dagger, because it was sheathed in an ebony scabbard and tied to his calf, escaped, and was brought out by Wang Chang. However, Wang Chang had never been fond of daggers, so even though he had brought it with him, he had never used it. If it were not for the fact that he was forced into a corner by the draconic beast, he would not have used it until now. Rumble, a series of earth-shattering crashing sounds came from behind. The huge draconic beast was cut open by Wang Chang, leaving a long trail of sticky blood behind, and then slammed into the wall of the cavern 30 to 40 meters away. Even its head had smashed through the rock stratum and was inserted into the wall. Looking at the corpse of the draconic beast, Wang Chang was overjoyed. The woozy steel was indeed the sharpest weapon in his memory. It seemed that even the draconic beast could not withstand its sharpness. However, the joy in Wang Chang's heart did not last long. In the next second, the earth trembled, and the huge draconic beast, which had been lying motionless on the wall, suddenly stood up slowly. That monstrous aura, like a blazing flame, once again exploded from its body. Under Wang Chang's gaze, the mountain-like draconic beast slowly turned around. Its huge head was terrifying, and it stared at Wang Chang from 30 to 40 meters away. For the first time, Wang Chang felt a monstrous hatred from this beast. However, what caught Wang Chang's attention the most was the abdomen of the draconic beast. Wang Chang's previous move was indeed effective. The softest part of the draconic beast's abdomen was slashed open, and it was more than half a foot deep. The flesh on both sides was exposed, and a large amount of blood was gushing out of the draconic beast's body. The air was filled with the pungent smell of blood, but Wang Chang was not happy at all. Right in front of his eyes, the woozy steel dagger had almost split the draconic beast in half, and the long wound was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a few breaths' time, the draconic beast's injury had recovered to its original state, and not even the marks left by the sword could be seen. How is this possible? Wang Chang's heart sank. The power of rebirth. Wang Chang never thought that this 5 to 6 meters tall behemoth, in addition to its astonishing strength and the ability to break through the defense, would also have such a heaven-defying power of rebirth. With this alone, no matter how hard Wang Chang tried, no matter how many tricks he used, he would not be able to hurt it. Chapter 1484. Chapter 1353. Chapter 1353 Inch Roar. The dragon finally roared and used all of its strength to charge at Wang Chong. Rumble! The entrance of the cave collapsed. The huge head of the draconic beast burrowed into the cave. Its strong and sturdy body trembled non-stop as it arched forward. Large amounts of rocks and soil fell down. The dragon opened its mouth and spat out a large amount of flames. Wang Chong's body jumped. Without any hesitation, he immediately headed into the depths of the cave. Behind him, the gigantic draconic beast was still approaching Wang Chong. However, the small hole was an obstacle that the draconic beast could not cross. 10 meters, 100 meters, 1,000 meters. Finally, the roars of the draconic beast gradually faded away, becoming barely audible. Clearly, in the face of reality, it had no choice but to give up on its prey, Wang Chong. Wang Chong leaned against the wall, his chest rising and falling rapidly. In just a moment, Wang Chong felt like he had taken a trip to the gates of hell. His clothes were drenched in sweat. After temporarily getting rid of the threat of death, Wang Chong had time to think about other things. The Yellow Emperor? Dragon Beast? What's going on? Why would the Origin Immortal Lord's treasury contain 3 vicious beasts from the era of the Yellow Emperor? What's going on? Wang Chong's heart was in turmoil. The Origin Immortal art was the world's #1 art. No matter how dangerous it was, Wang Chong would not find it strange. But now, Wang Chong was beginning to feel that something was wrong. Wang Chong could accept the other traps, such as the metal storm in the pit and the stellar-piercing beetles. But the dragon beasts of the Yellow Emperor's era, they shouldn't have appeared here. It seemed like these arrangements were not meant to protect a treasure like the Origin Immortal art, but some sort of secret. What the hell is going on? Wang Chong was deep in thought, but he still couldn't figure it out. I'll think of a way to find out later. Wang Chong continued to move forward. After advancing another few kilometers, he found a secluded place and quickly sat down cross-legged. This time, his injuries were more serious than he had imagined. The continuous fighting, running, and fighting had finally further aggravated the injuries in Wang Chong's body. The condition of Wang Chong's body was much more serious than ever before. Master once said that once the great yin-yang heaven creation art begins to deteriorate, there is no way to reverse it, and it will rapidly worsen in a short period of time. If they fought too fiercely or used their stellar energy, it would lead to all sorts of serious consequences, even death. This was also the reason why he concealed his strength and bided his time, allowing his traitorous disciple to take advantage of him. I originally wanted to delay for a period of time until I found the old village chief and master. But from the looks of it now, he couldn't delay any longer. No matter what, I have to find a way to obtain the Origin Immortal art and completely heal my injuries. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. With a thought, all the stellar energy in his body and meridians flowed into his dantian, and then he began to adjust his stellar energy. Steam began to seep out of the top of his head as Wang Chong focused all his energy on adjusting his stellar energy. Time passed slowly. The cave was quiet and there was no sound at all. After some time, Wang Chong's twitching and twisted meridians finally began to return to normal. Wang Chong's mind gradually entered a state of tranquility. The world was still, not a single sound could be heard. While Wang Chong was focused on recovering from his injuries, he suddenly felt a strange sensation, like someone was shaking his shoulder. Wang Chong didn't care at first, but then he heard someone calling out to him. In the beginning, the voice was still very far away, barely audible. But soon, it was getting closer and clearer. Wang Chong, Wang Chong. The voice was filled with anxiety and concern, and it was even faintly choked with sobs. Wang Chong was bewildered, completely confused as to what was going on. He had been separated from his master underground, and logically speaking, he shouldn't have been able to hear anyone else's voice, but this voice was so real and clear. A moment later, Wang Chong finally stopped cultivating and opened his eyes. A beam of light suddenly appeared in front of him. It was long and narrow, and it was constantly expanding, but the light was blurry. What's going on here? Where did this light come from underground? Wang Chong was flabbergasted. But Wang Chong quickly realized that something was wrong. This did not seem to be a simple source of light from underground. In this light, Wang Chong could faintly make out a few blurry figures. One of the figures seemed to be silently weeping as it looked at him. Even though he couldn't see it very clearly, Wang Chong could sense that it was filled with sorrow. What's going on? Wang Chong was even more shocked. No matter how slow he was, he could still sense that something was wrong with the situation before him. It seemed to be different from what he had imagined. He tried to open his eyes wide, trying to see what was in front of him clearly. After an indeterminate amount of time, the light in front of him finally became clear. However, before he could get a clear look, a figure pounced on him in the next moment. Wang Chong, you're finally awake. The voice was crying tears of joy, and when it reached the end, it suddenly began sobbing on Wang Chong's body. Chi-chi-chin. Finally, everything in front of him became clear. As he looked at that familiar, weeping face, Wang Chong was stunned. What was going on? Hadn't he just woken up from his cultivation? Hadn't he just stabilized his chaotic stellar energy? Why had he suddenly appeared here? Why had he suddenly seen Su Yichin? Looking around, Wang Chong saw even more familiar figures at Su Yichin's side: the king of song, the old butler, his big uncle, his mother, Huang Qian'er, Zhao Yadong, Bai Siling, his master, and the village chief. All of them were in the room, surrounding the bed and sorrowfully looking at him. No, his master and the village chief, an illusion. This had to be an illusion. He had clearly been searching for the world's #1 origin immortal art 16,000 meters beneath the northwest. How could he have appeared here? Wang Chong's body moved as he tried to sit up and escape this illusion. But before Wang Chong could sit up, an intense soreness came from all over his body. A broad palm quickly pressed down on Wang Chong's shoulder. Chong, your injuries haven't healed yet. Don't act rashly. Your master will treat your injuries and help you recover as quickly as possible. Master? Wang Chong raised his head and saw that his master, the evil emperor, had appeared at his side at some point and was pressing down on him, his face a picture of confusion. We've done our best to nurse you back to health, but the cultivation defect of the great yin-yang heaven creation art is not so easy to treat. Another familiar voice came from next to him, the chief of Wushang, walking over with a solemn expression. Wang Chong stared in shock at these two familiar figures, his mind in chaos. For a moment he was confused. He couldn't tell the difference between illusion and reality. Master, weren't we adventuring in the northwest in search of the origin immortal art? Why you here? Could it be that the matter there is already over? Wang Chong was flabbergasted. Could it be that he had actually fainted while exploring the underground world, and then his master and the chief of Wushang had brought him here? The northwest? The origin immortal art? The evil emperor and the chief of Wushang glanced at Wang Chong, both seeing deep concern in each other's eyes. King of foreign lands, I know that you're still concerned about the matters of the imperial court, but you've already done your best in the conflict between the militarists and the Confucians. No one will blame you. At this moment, a long sigh sounded by Wang Chong's ear. Unknowingly, scholar Lu Tingji had walked over. Looking at Wang Chong on the bed, his eyes were filled with pity. The conflict between the militarists and the Confucians? Wang Chong was dumbfounded. What was going on here? Hadn't the conflict between the militarists and the Confucians already passed? Chong, you still don't know? It's been 7 days and 7 nights since you suffered a cultivation defect in the study and we discovered you vomiting blood and falling unconscious. You've been unconscious for 7 days and 7 nights. Madame Wang suddenly looked at Wang Chong, her heart aching, and she covered her face with her hands. Finally, she could no longer hold back her tears. What? Wang Chong was dumbfounded. The study? Cultivation defect? He clearly remembered falling unconscious in the study. When he woke up, he had been in the carriage, and then he had gone to the northwest with his master and the others. How could he still be at home? Had he been imagining things? Impossible. He couldn't believe it. Mother, Grand Scholar Lu, you're joking, right? Wang Chong smiled at the crowd, his body moving back a little as he maintained his composure. Everyone silently stared at Wang Chong. But the ones who had truly dealt a heavy blow to Wang Chong were his master, the evil emperor, and the chief of Wushang. Chong, I don't know what you're talking about. But your master and the village chief have never gone to the northwest, nor have we searched for the origin immortal art. Although we truly do want to go to the northwest, no one has obtained the origin immortal art in the last several hundred years. How could it be that easy? The chief of Wushang added. The chief of Wushang had a close relationship with Wang Chong, and he had always treated Wang Chong as a junior, just like the younger generation of the village. But perhaps because he had been dealt a blow by the Confucian sect, Wang Chong's current state was clearly not right. Buzz! As Wang Chong stared at these familiar and strange faces, he was struck dumb and speechless. Fake, it must be fake. I must be dreaming, Wang Chong muttered to himself. He subconsciously looked under the bed. There had to be a difference between a dream and reality, and the greatest difference was that in a dream, one's reflection would never appear. A dream could never be that real. Chapter 1485. Something's not right. Wang Chong shook his head and suddenly raised his head to look at his palms. His palms were fair and slender, and the fine lines on the back of his hands were clearly visible and lifelike. Through his fingertips, Wang Chong could even feel the cool air in the room, as well as the feeling of air flowing through his fingers. That feeling was too real, too subtle, and completely not something that could be felt in a dream. And as his gaze swept across the fingernails, Wang Chong could clearly see the dim white light reflected by the fingernails in the room. Everything was so detailed, so real. How could this be? Wang Chong was stunned, and his mind instantly went blank. It was impossible to feel touch in a dream, and it was even more impossible to feel such delicate warmth and detail. For a moment, Wang Chong's mind was also in a mess. Reality and illusion, the past and the present, all intertwined together. He had originally firmly believed in his experience in the Northwest. But now, all these beliefs were suddenly shaken. Wang Chong suddenly did not dare to be so sure. What made him even more uneasy was that his whole body was aching, and the chaotic meridians in his body were extremely similar to the situation when he had gone berserk in the study. Could it be that the so-called trip to the Northwest was actually just an illusion after he went berserk? After he fainted in the study, he was not forcefully brought to the Northwest by his master? In fact, all of this was his illusion, his dream. All these thoughts flashed through his mind, and Wang Chong's mind was suddenly in a mess. Everything in front of him made it impossible for him to distinguish reality from illusion. You've just woken up, rest well. Your Highness, let's withdraw first and let him rest for a while. Su Yichin's considerate voice suddenly sounded in his ear. The group of people quickly left the room and went out. The room quickly quieted down. Wang Chong sat alone on the bed, but his heart could not calm down for a long time. What is going on here? Wang Chong muttered to himself. He could feel the unique texture of the black sandalwood under his body, and he could smell that fragrance. If it was really a dream, it couldn't be that realistic. Was I really unconscious for 7 days and 7 nights? Wang Chong walked to the window. His heart was in turmoil. Rays of sunlight shone through the cracks of the window and fell on Wang Chong's body. The warm feeling was so real that Wang Chong couldn't say a word. Pushing open the door, Wang Chong walked out. In front of him was a familiar garden, a pond, and rows upon rows of the Wang clan's mansions. Wang Chong could even see the patterns of flowers and birds on the glazed tiles, as well as a chirping bird on the roof. When Wang Chong recalled his trip to the Northwest, he found that the originally clear memories suddenly became blurry, as if it was really a dream. Maybe it really was a dream. A thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind, and he slowly accepted his situation. Thud. As he was thinking, fierce knocking came from the distance, and soon, Wang Chong heard the furious voices of Su Kui and the others. Bastard! Who allowed you to come here? Get out of here! Those who come are guests. I heard that the king of foreign lands is sick and has been unconscious all this time. When our young master heard this, he specially sent a gift. The mighty king of foreign lands' residents shouldn't be so stingy, right? Very soon, a voice came from outside the courtyard walls. It sounded like it was full of ridicule and vaguely gave off a feeling that it harbored ill intentions. Scram. Don't go too far. So what if your Confucian sect is in power? If not for our Highness, do you think your Confucian sect could have stood out? Our Highness does not welcome people like you. Another furious voice came from the distance, Chen Bin also angrily shouting. A few servants and maids quickly joined in, and the entrance to the Wang clan residence was abuzz. Stop. At this moment, a voice interrupted the crowd. At the gate of the Wang clan residence, Su Qi, Chen Bin, and the many guards of the Wang clan had all gathered together, all of them staring in indignation at the figure standing outside the gate. Hearing the noise behind them, they turned their heads, and when they saw that familiar figure, they were all stunned. "Milord." Everyone lowered their heads and saw that at some point, Wang Chong had walked up behind them. "All of you withdraw," Wang Chong said. His face was slightly pale and he seemed somewhat weak. Upon hearing Wang Chong's words, everyone bowed and made way for Wang Chong. "Hey, Your Highness, long time no see." At almost the same time, that mocking and ill-intentioned voice that Wang Chong had heard spoke once more. "Everyone says that Your Highness has been unconscious for 7 days and nights, and that your heart is filled with depression that is difficult to dispel. I didn't think that the legend was false. It turns out that Your Highness has already woken up. It's you." Wang Chong turned his head and looked in the direction of the voice, only to see several figures standing outside the gate of the Wang clan residence. The person in the lead was dressed in a long black robe, his long hair draped over his shoulders. His eyes were fixed on Wang Chong, giving him an unruly and provocative look. Wang Chong had no impression of this person's appearance, but Wang Chong remembered his aura very clearly. It was the sword demon who had performed the sword dance at the 100 Victories sacrificial ceremony in the Drunken Moon Pavilion. Behind him was a man and a woman, both experts of the Confucian sect, holding a brocade box. It was obviously the gift he had mentioned. "Impudent! Don't go too far." Su Qi, Chen Bin, and the others behind Wang Chong bellowed angrily at the sword demon's words. They were so enraged that they almost made a move. What gift? They were just here to find out the truth, to provoke Wang Chong. If not for them, why would His Highness vomit blood? Enough. Wang Chong suddenly spoke up. He waved his hand to stop the crowd, then turned to the sword demon. "Go back and tell your young master that this king has accepted his gift. Tell him that this king thanks him for his good intentions." Wang Chong's expression was calm, as if he wasn't angry in the slightest. The sword demon and the others were dumbfounded by these words. Wang Chong's reaction was completely different from what they had expected, but the sword demon quickly reacted. Your Highness is truly magnanimous. It seems that Your Highness has truly let go of the matter of the prefectural army. Since that's the case, this one will take his leave." The sword demon bowed slightly. "The prefectural army?" Wang Chong raised an eyebrow at the sword demon's words. "What? Your Highness still doesn't know?" The sword demon had already turned around to leave, but when he heard those words, he stopped and looked at Su Qi and the others behind Wang Chong. "What? They still haven't told Your Highness?" Wang Chong raised an eyebrow, immediately understanding something. He turned back to look at Su Qi and the others. In an instant, their expressions changed and they all lowered their heads. Outside the gate, the sword demon immediately understood what was going on. "So they're still hiding it from Your Highness. Since that's the case, this one won't say anything more. I'll take my leave." The sword ghost smiled slightly, a strange smile appearing on his face. He quickly led everyone away. "What's going on?" In the study, Wang Chong suddenly asked as he looked at the crowd before him. Su Qi and Chen Bin looked at each other hesitantly, but under Wang Chong's coercion, they still spoke up. "In truth, many things happened while Your Highness was unconscious. Without Your Highness to contend with them, the Confucian sect and the first prince took complete control of the court. In addition, Your Highness vomited blood and was unconscious for 7 days and 7 nights. The King of Song and the others were all worried about Your Highness's injuries. Without Your Highness's advice, the Confucian sect colluded with the first prince and finally succeeded in dissolving the prefectural armies. Just a few days ago, the imperial court completed the disbandment of the prefectural armies and destroyed all the lists. In the future, it will be impossible to recall them again. That's not all. The Confucian sect, the first prince, the prime minister, and King Qi joined forces to strip the king of Song of his military authority and take back his authority in the Bureau of Military Personnel. In addition, the Confucian sect dispatched a large number of Confucian supervisors to the army, weakening the military to the extreme. Now, almost all of the military is under the Confucian sect's control. One after another, the crowd slowly recounted the problems that had occurred while Wang Chong was unconscious. Even though he had been enlightened by the seniors in the underground stone room and had become much more accepting of the situation, as he listened to their reports, Wang Chong still felt a stabbing pain in his heart. Although he said that he was relieved, he had worked so hard for so long, invested so much blood, and sacrificed so many soldiers. In the end, all of this had been destroyed. How could he possibly accept this? Moreover, this conflict between the militarists and the Confucians concerned the continuity of the Central Plains, as well as the survival of all the people in the world. All of you leave. I want to be alone for a while. Wang Chong suddenly waved his hand. My lord. A trace of reluctance flashed through the eyes of Su Kui and the others, and they quickly withdrew. As for Wang Chong, he stood there motionless for a very, very long time. In the end, Wang Chong couldn't help but let out a long sigh. Pushing open the door, Wang Chong walked out of the study, past the garden pond, and out the main gate. Even though some maids and servants saw Wang Chong, no one dared to stop him. In this muddle-headed state, thousands of thoughts flashed through his mind, but also like he wasn't thinking about anything at all. By the time Wang Chong came to his senses, he was on a bustling street. As far as the eye could see, there were peddlers selling rouge and face powder, merchants who were in a hurry, and butchers who were hawking loudly in their stalls. But in this bustling crowd, Wang Chong saw many unique figures. They had large beards and wore long robes. All of them had hawkish eyes and deep noses, and they all had thick accents from foreign lands. The Who. Chapter 1486. Wang Chong had grown up in the capital, so the number of Who here was nothing to be surprised about. But now, Wang Chong could see that there were even more Who in the capital. Gogurians, Uzan, Western Turkic Khaganate, Turks, Arabs, almost all of them could be found in the crowd. With a glance, Wang Chong could tell that there were 10-some spies among the Who, but the people around him had gentle and kind faces and seemed oblivious to all this. In the harmonious world, there's no need to stand on ceremony. Take it. Not far away, a shopkeeper said with a faint smile. He quickly stuffed a piece of cloth into the hands of a who clearly practiced martial arts. We're all one family, so there's no need to be so distant. I know that you don't have much money, so I'll give this to you at half price. Another shopkeeper nearby said, Take care. Come often in the future. Just like Advisor Junior Zhang said, the world is one family, so there's no need to be polite with us. Enthusiastic voices came from all around him. Wang Chong could see that everyone had a kind expression on their faces, seemingly unaware of the danger that lurked in the air. Wang Chong felt a stabbing pain in his heart, and he began to walk even faster. Along the way, he could see that the atmosphere of the capital was completely different. The massive capital of the Great Tang was like a defenseless city, opening its bosom to everyone. Isn't that the king of foreign lands? While he was muddle-headed along the way, a familiar voice came from the front. At first, Wang Chong didn't realize who it was, but a moment later, Wang Chong finally remembered, and his body trembled. Cheng Qianli. After fighting side by side with Cheng Qianli at Talas for so long, Wang Chong would never mistake his voice. But Wang Chong remembered that Cheng Qianli and the Anxi Protectorate Army were stationed in the western regions, not allowed to leave their garrisons without a military order. How could they appear in the distant capital? Wang Chong suddenly raised his head. In the dense crowd opposite him, Wang Chong suddenly saw a familiar figure. His body was ramrod straight, and he held his head high. The aura he exuded was like a raging fire that had been tempered hundreds and thousands of times. It was the Vice Protector General of the Anxi Protectorate, Cheng Qianli, and in front of him, Wang Chong saw an unexpected figure. Gao Xianji. How could this be? Seeing that imposing figure, Wang Chang's entire body shook violently, instantly setting off huge waves. He was already surprised that Cheng Qianli showed up here. It was not normal for Gao Xianji to show up with him. A protector general, a great general, was a figure whose every action could affect the entire world. They had high ranks and extraordinary statuses, and their actions concerned the safety of the entire border. In normal circumstances, without a decree from the sovereign, they would not appear in the capital for at least 30 or 40 years. Protector General Gao, General Cheng, why have you appeared here? Wang Chong came back to his senses and quickened his pace toward these two figures. At almost the same time, Gao Xianji and Cheng Qianli parted the crowd and walked toward Wang Chong. Wang Chong, you're finally awake. Sincere joy appeared on Gao Xianji and Cheng Qianli's faces as they looked at Wang Chong. Qianli and I paid a visit to your residence, but you were unconscious the entire time. Recently, I heard that your injuries had gotten much better, so we were planning to pay you a visit. I didn't think that we'd run into you here. As an important general of the empire, Gao Xianji had always presented himself as dignified and dignified. It was only in front of Wang Chong, the youngest marquis of the Tang dynasty, that Gao Xianji would show this amiable and approachable side. But Wang Chong had no time to reminisce with these two. Lord Gao, General Cheng, what's going on here? Why aren't you at the Anxi garrison, but in the capital? Wang Chong said to the duo. Buzz. At Wang Chong's words, the smiles on their faces instantly vanished, their expressions turning grim. Buzz. Wang Chong, I won't hide it from you. In truth, I'm no longer a protector general. The imperial court stripped me of my military authority, and the Anxi Protectorate is currently under the control of the Confucian sect army supervisors. After a few moments of silence, Gao Xianji finally revealed the truth. Cheng Qianli also fell silent. Boom! Wang Chong's eyes went wide at Gao Xianji's words, a look of disbelief on his face. Actually, we're not the only ones who've been summoned back. Almost all of the generals and commanders at the borders have been summoned back. The military situation is already hopeless. The military has lost its momentum, Cheng Qianli sternly said, his expression extremely gloomy. Wang Chong said nothing, but his chest was heavy and he felt like he was suffocating. Your Highness, the Confucian sect has gained power in the court, and the entire empire is under their control. We've already lost the capital to contend against them, Cheng Qianli sorrowfully said. As a general who had spent his entire life on the battlefield, he would have never been willing to accept such an outcome. But now, the first prince was regent and had formed a massive alliance with the Confucian sect. This faction had taken control of the imperial court, and no other faction could stop it. Wang Chong felt like his heart was being stabbed by a needle. Although the two of them had only touched on the matter and had not said too much, how could Wang Chong not know what they were feeling? The Anxi they had fought for more than half their lives had been occupied by a sparrow. One could easily imagine what they were feeling. Let's go. It's rare for us to run into each other today. Let's go drink until we're drunk. Gao Xianji put his arm around Wang Chong's shoulder, and the three of them headed for the nearest restaurant. This gathering lasted from noon to night, and Wang Chong did not return home until very late at night. Days passed, and in these last few days, Wang Chong was finally able to connect to the information he had neglected while he was unconscious. At the same time, the latest news from the border was also being sent to the Wang clan residence. Flap flap. In a short period of time, messenger pigeons flew into the Wang family's mansion from all directions, bringing news from the borders. Uzun has obtained the latest news. That Senpo is recruiting an army at Bariba Canyon and is secretly training them. Based on what we can see, this army has reached 600,000, and not only has it not decreased, it has even increased. Your Highness, please make a wise decision. On the 17th, the new emperor of Mengshi Zhao, Fenjie, is gathering the Manchus of the south and training wild elephants on a large scale, preparing to rebuild the army. Based on the information we have obtained, Mengshi Zhao has more than 50,000 elephants, 10 times the size of the original White Elephant Corps. Your Highness, please make a clear decision. On the 15th, our scouts reported that the Northeast Patrol disguised themselves as Gogurians had successfully infiltrated 11 southern cities of Goguryeo. After paying the lives of 10 scouts, we finally obtained news that Yun Gaesaman is on a large scale on the southern coast, building warships and training sailors. He has gathered more than 400,000 sailors and is preparing to attack the Tang dynasty on the waterways. On the 19th, there has been no fighting on the northern border for several months, but just a few days ago, one of our logistics units was ambushed by an unknown force. 2,000 civilians were killed, and 1,000 escorting cavalry were ambushed and completely wiped out. All the supplies, weapons, and provisions have been plundered, and their whereabouts are unknown. Although there is no clear evidence, we can basically confirm that the target is the Western Turkic Khaganate. Based on the information we have gathered, the various who have begun to change their tactics, moving from the open to the dark and continuing to pose an enormous threat to us. All the border armies have been ordered by the army supervisor to strictly forbid the investigation of such looting and disappearances. The soldiers are becoming increasingly dissatisfied. One piece of information after another was delivered to Wang Chong, each one stabbing at Wang Chong's heart. He was getting more and more worried. The entire Tang dynasty was beset with danger, but no one seemed to notice. Although Wang Chong had gathered a great deal of information, the imperial court was currently under the control of the first prince and Li Junxian, and it would not listen to any of his suggestions. No matter what, I can't let this continue, Wang Chong quietly said to himself. He made up his mind. But at this moment, another matter completely disrupted Wang Chong's plans. Chong, your mother has something to discuss with you. 3 days later, Wang Chong's mother, Madame Wang, suddenly appeared in Wang Chong's room, her expression solemn and her eyes unprecedentedly serious. You're no longer young. Based on the customs of the noble children of the capital, you should be able to marry and have children at your age. You were unconscious for 7 days, and your mother was truly afraid. Your mother has thought for a long time, and it's about time for you to start a family. Your mother saw that you and Miss Su were in love, and that she was the one who took care of you day and night while you were unconscious. While you were unconscious, she became much thinner. Of all the girls in the capital, your mother likes this child the most. Thus, while you were unconscious, your mother made a decision. It would have been fine if you remained unconscious, but if you could wake up, I would have this child become my Wang clan's daughter-in-law. What? Wang Chong was flabbergasted by his mother's words. He had never expected such a thing. What, you're still not willing? Madame Wang grimaced, her voice instantly tinged with displeasure. This, your child doesn't dare. Wang Chong hurriedly lowered his head. Ever since he was young, he had been extremely respectful to his mother, so he would never dare to say half a word of disobedience in front of her. Only then did Madame Wang's eyes ease. Thus, after you woke up, your mother personally went to the Su residence. The head of the Su clan has already agreed, and Miss Su has also given her approval. This child probably loves you to the extreme. The 8th day of this month is an auspicious day for weddings. Your mother has already invited a famous matchmaker in the capital and prepared a grand gift. You can get married on that day. This way, your mother can also hold a grandson a little earlier. Your mother doesn't want to live in fear anymore. Madame Wang sternly said. Wang Chong stood there in a daze, unable to come back to his senses for a long time. This matter was far too unexpected. Wang Chong had never imagined that his mother would mention this matter to him at a time like this. Moreover, he was still young and could still struggle for a few more years. Chapter 1487. Since mother has already decided, let's do as mother says. Wang Chong lowered his head and deferentially said. Although he was somewhat surprised, for some reason, Wang Chong felt much more relaxed after saying these words. He did not feel the slightest bit forced. He once more recalled that delicate and beautiful face, recalled how she had accompanied him in the City of Steel, recalled how she had toiled day and night in the Chishi Protectorate headquarters to deliver food to him, her haggard appearance. He recalled how, on the way back to the east, she had looked at him with concern when he had woken up. The spring wind and rain silently nourished everything. At this moment, Wang Chong suddenly realized that Su Yiqin had already left a significant place in his heart. She had always silently contributed, never demanding anything. Even when she was in pain, she would endure it alone. He felt that he should give her an explanation, and this was the best result. Boom! The marriage between Wang Chong and Su Yiqin had shaken the entire capital. As the youngest king of foreign lands of the Tang dynasty, the most outstanding young war god, Wang Chong had created a series of dazzling feats that had left countless imperial great generals in awe. As for the Su clan, it controlled half of the Tang dynasty's logistics and was one of the most ancient clans in the Tang dynasty, possessing an extremely influential status. The marriage of two great clans, a talented man and a beautiful woman, instantly shook the capital and attracted the attention of the entire empire. On the auspicious day, the day of the wedding, the entire capital would turn out in droves. Even though the vast majority of the common people stood on the side of the Confucian sect in the conflict between Wang Chong and Li Junxian, Wang Chong's status as the king of foreign lands and his illustrious achievements in the past still left him with no small amount of influence among the common people. King of foreign lands. King of foreign lands. Fairy Su. Fairy Su. Outside the walls of the Wang family residence, not only were Wang Chong's shouts shaking the heavens, but the shouts for Su Yiqin were also no weaker than Wang Chong's. The Su clan was an illustrious clan of the Tang dynasty. Su Yiqin was also known as a fairy in the capital, and she had an extremely high reputation among the young men and women of the capital. Moreover, during the Battle of Talas, Su Yiqin had remained in the Qixi Protectorate headquarters, strategizing in the rear and supplying all kinds of supplies to stabilize the rear. This made her reputation in the capital far greater than that of any other woman. Long after the conclusion of the Battle of Talas, many nobles and nobles had sent invitations to the Su clan, hoping to form a good relationship with it. But in the end, it was still Wang Chong who took the lead. This day has finally come. As Wang Chong stood under the plum blossom tree in the courtyard, his hair blowing in the wind, his mind relaxed. Ever since he had made his decision, Wang Chong felt like a stone had been lifted from his heart. He had been busy all this time, constantly rushing about for the sake of the people of the world. As for himself, he hadn't really cared. Being stripped of his military authority and forced to withdraw from the center of power had given Wang Chong a rare chance to truly care about the people he cared about, the things he cared about, and, more importantly, the people he loved. How much longer until Qixin and the others arrive? Wang Chong, dressed in a bright red ceremonial robe, held his hands behind his back. In the light of the rising sun, Wang Chong's eyes were bright and spirited, exuding an aura that was completely different from the murderous aura he exuded on the battlefield. It was gentle and modest, giving off the feeling that he was a beautiful piece of jade. Your Highness, Lady Su's palanquin is already on the way. It should arrive in 10 minutes. In front of Wang Chong stood Su Kui, Chen Bin, and the others. Su Kui stepped forward and bowed respectfully. Reporting. Su Kui had barely finished speaking when a series of hurried footsteps rang out. A Wang clan guard, his head lowered, swiftly walked up from the rear. Reporting to Your Highness, the Su clan's bridal procession is about to arrive. The madam and the master are already waiting at the gate. The guard's words excited everyone, and Wang Chong was also overjoyed, a heartfelt smile on his lips. Come, let's go to the gate to welcome them. With a wave of his sleeve, Wang Chong immediately walked forward, passing through the gardens and ponds. Along the way, he saw that the Wang clan was decorated with lanterns and streamers, and it was a festive atmosphere. At the gate of the Wang clan, maids and servants dressed in festive red clothes were clustered together. At the very front of the crowd was a middle-aged woman, her hair covered in pearls and jade hairpins. She was anxiously waiting at the gate. Mother. Wang Chong strode forward, quickening his pace. Upon seeing Wang Chong, the crowd turned their heads. Chong, you came just in time. That child Qixin is about to arrive. You should hurry and get ready. Madame Wang's face was ruddy, and even her brow was tinged with a smile. This was the first time in a long time that Wang Chong had seen his mother so happy. Ah Chong, you've grown up. You're finally starting a family. Big Uncle has also prepared a gift for you. I hope that you and Lady Su can harmonize with each other and contribute to our Wang clan's prosperity." At this moment, a mellow voice came from Wang Chong's big uncle, Wang Zhen, stroking his beard as he joyfully spoke to Wang Chong. As the Wang clan's Qilin son, Wang Chong was currently the most dazzling existence of the Wang clan's younger generation. Wang Zhen was also very fond of this nephew of his, so he had come of his own accord to welcome the bride at the gate as an elder of the Wang clan. "Many thanks, big uncle." Wang Chong faintly smiled and bowed. She's here. The bride is here." Just as they were speaking, a commotion suddenly sounded in front of them. In an instant, a commotion broke out in the crowd, and within the gates, Wang Chong turned his head over. His mother and big uncle also turned their heads over as well. With the crackling of firecrackers, a long procession of gongs and drums could be seen at the end of the street. At the very front of the procession was a gilded red sedan chair that was making its way toward the Wang clan residence. Wang Chong stood at the gate and looked into the distance, immediately noticing the banners of the Su clan in the procession. She's here. The bride is here." The crowd in the Wang clan residence immediately grew excited. Firecrackers began to explode, gongs and drums filled the air, and rows of maids and guards of the Wang clan began to walk out of the Wang clan residence. And when the sedan chair appeared, the crowd on both sides of the street began to cheer. "Fairy Su, Fairy Su." The deafening cheers resounded through the world. As Wang Chong gazed at the approaching sedan chair, the smile on his lips deepened and his eyes grew gentler and gentler. "The bride has arrived." The groom stepped forward to receive the sedan chair. Wang Chong's robe shook as he strode down the steps, all the way to the red sedan chair. "Open the sedan chair, open the sedan chair. Fairy Su, Fairy Su." "Groom, hurry and carry the bride." Seeing this scene, the crowd in the surroundings began to cheer loudly, and waves of shouts rang out incessantly. The Holy Emperor had personally conferred the King of Foreign Lands to the most virtuous and beautiful Su Yiqin of the Tang dynasty. This wedding could be said to be the wedding of the century of the Tang dynasty. How could the common people of the capital miss out on such a good opportunity to make trouble for the groom? As Wang Chong listened to the cheers, he only faintly smiled. As he gazed at the curtain of the sedan chair, his eyes grew even gentler, even tinged with affection. On the side, a maid had already brought over a red scale. Wang Chong took the scale, slightly bent down, and inserted it into the gap between the curtain and the carriage. He lightly lifted it up. "Qichin, I've been waiting for you for a long time." As Wang Chong moved, the curtain of the sedan chair was raised, the gap growing larger and larger. Through the curtain, one could see a crimson figure seated within, a phoenix veil inlaid with gold covering her face. Just when Wang Chong was preparing to take the bride out of the sedan chair, Wang Chong sensed a hair-thin killing intent. Wang Chong grimaced as he sensed that something was wrong. But just when he was about to retreat, it was too late. Rumble! A moment later, an enormous energy slammed into Wang Chong's chest with the momentum of a thunderbolt. The bride, who had been sitting peacefully in the sedan chair, had suddenly shot out and launched a fatal strike against Wang Chong. Rumble! It was like a stone that gave rise to 1,000 ripples. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned when they saw this sudden scene. Astonishment, shock, bewilderment, disbelief. All sorts of emotions flashed ceaselessly in everyone's eyes. No one would have thought that the originally lively festive scene would actually develop into such a state. No one had expected the bride of the Su clan to attack the groom the moment she arrived at the Wang family residence. Not good. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. The bride is murdering the groom. In an instant, the originally lively crowd became extremely chaotic. Countless people's eyes were filled with fear as they fled to the two sides of the road. Boom! Before the crowd could escape, Wang Chong was sent flying like a cannonball after being struck by the bride's palm. He crashed into the main gate of the Wang family's residence, causing the entire gate to collapse. Chong. Seeing this scene, Madame Wang was stunned. Her eyes suddenly widened, and only after a long time did she let out a cry of surprise. as if she could not believe that such a thing had happened. Madam, young master. The entire Wang family residence was in chaos. Protect the prince. Su Qi, Chen Bin, and the others were also shocked, but they reacted quickly, pulling out their swords and placing them in front of Wang Chong, protecting Wang Chong. The entire Wang family was thrown into chaos. At this moment, the one who suffered the greatest shock and impact was none other than Wang Chong. You're not Su Yiqin. Who are you people? Chapter 1488. Translator, Ryuxinji Editor, H2H2 Mr. After suffering chi deviation, he had been unconscious for 7 days and 7 nights. His spirit and strength had all been severely affected, otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to be so easily killed. The bride of the Su clan had actually taken advantage of the wedding reception to try and kill the groom. This was a huge shock to everyone present. However, Wang Chong reacted faster than anyone else. In just an instant, Wang Chong realized that the bride in the sedan chair was definitely not Su Yiqin, and Su Yiqin definitely did not have such a high cultivation base. On the other hand, the bride paid no heed to Wang Chong. Kill him. A woman's voice suddenly sounded from under the red veil. The voice was cold and filled with killing intent, and it was completely devoid of emotion. With the sound of ripping silk, the red veil, along with the red gown, exploded in an instant. Meanwhile, the bride in the red dress also instantly changed her clothes. She was wearing a black robe, and her eyes were as cold as frost. Meanwhile, a pale ghost mask covered her face, concealing all of her features. Clang! The black long sword in the person's hand trembled, and she immediately became one with the sword. She drew a series of afterimages in the air, and with the momentum of a thunderbolt, she charged toward Wang Chong. Boom boom boom. Almost at the same time, the dantians of the Su family's bridal procession behind the female assassin surged, and their bright red clothes, which represented celebration, exploded one after another, revealing the black robes they wore underneath. Kill! These people all became one with the sword and leaped up, charging toward Wang Chong with astonishing speed. Protect my lord! The expressions of Su Qi and the group of Wang clan guards changed drastically, and they all rushed to stand in front of Wang Chong. Before Wang Chong could act, Su Qi and the others all roared, and stellar energy erupted from their bodies. Like dragons, they all charged forward. Boom! With just one strike, a series of screams could be heard as Su Qi and the others were sent flying like kites with their strings cut. In front of the female assassin, they could not even withstand a single blow. They screamed in pain and were sent flying in all directions. As for the female assassin, her gaze was piercingly cold. Together with the others behind her, she laid out an inescapable net and charged at Wang Chong. Men in black. Wang Chong's heart trembled as he recognized it at a glance. These assassins disguised as Su Yiqin and the Su family were actually the men in black who had been chasing him relentlessly. Wang Chong could not be more familiar with their auras. Protect old madam. Wang Chong's gaze was cold. With a wave of his right hand, a long sword immediately flew into his hand. In the next moment, when the group of men in black was only a few feet away from Wang Chong, Wang Chong's body suddenly shook and he suddenly shot out like lightning. In an instant, Wang Chong was like a ghost, instantly appearing in front of the female assassin. He stretched out his right hand, and the long sword in his hand struck the tip of the female assassin's sword with perfect precision. At the same time, he slapped out with his left hand, forcefully clapping with the female assassin. The powerful force instantly sent the female assassin flying. Following that, Wang Chong's figure constantly changed. His body moved left and right, up and down, and every time he appeared in a position that the men in black would not expect. Unlike before, every time Wang Chong attacked, he did his best to avoid a direct confrontation with them. Instead, he would appear in a position that they would not expect, either with a punch or a finger. Waves of screams were heard as the men in black who had flown into the air were sent crashing to the ground by Wang Chong. Arg! For a time, screams were heard without end. When Wang Chong fought with them, he always chose the weakest spots on their bodies to minimize the consumption of his stellar chi. With his chi deviation condition, this was also the best expedient measure. Sush. However, right at this moment, a sudden change occurred. "I'll fight you to the death. Let's die together." A ferocious roar that had been suppressed for a long time suddenly sounded in his ears. Before Wang Chong could react, a commoner, who had been forced to near Wang Chong by the chaotic crowd, suddenly launched an attack. He suddenly became one with his sword and fiercely stabbed at Wang Chong. This sword had been tempered 1,000 times and was extremely fast. Moreover, it gave off the feeling that he was determined to die. Moreover, the other party seemed to have already calculated Wang Chong's reaction and chose the perfect time. Even with Wang Chong's ability, he had to admit that this sword was extremely difficult to dodge. Even so, Wang Chong did not panic. With a sway of his body, he immediately dodged to the side. But after moving several dozen feet, the aura in Wang Chong's body was instantly thrown into chaos. His body that had been moving to the side immediately slowed down by half a beat. Swoosh! There was a cold flash of light, and the chest area of Wang Chong's crimson robe immediately split open. The sharp blade of the sword swept through the flesh, and a stream of blood immediately spurted out. Bang! Although shocked, Wang Chong did not panic. With a fierce palm strike, he immediately sent the commoner flying, tumbling several dozen feet away. "Young master! Young master!" Seeing Wang Chong bleed, all the Wang family servants and guards cried out in alarm. "Don't come over!" Wang Chong shouted harshly. He had still been too careless. His injuries had not yet healed, and the effects of his cultivation deviation were greater than he had imagined. Wang Chong extended his right hand and flicked his fingers. In a flash, he immediately sealed the acupoints on his body and stopped the bleeding. But even so, Wang Chong's crisis was still far from resolved. Just when Wang Chong was about to defeat the men in black, a loud shout could be heard. "King of foreign lands, you're dead. Kill him." Choppy Tang words, thick with a Hu accent, could be heard coming from the crowd. The moment Wang Chong defeated the men in black, more whistling sounds could be heard. On the two sides of the street, the Hu experts with vicious eyes suddenly tore off their disguises, pulled out their scimitars, and leaped into the air, lunging at Wang Chong. 1, 2, 3. In a few short moments, 30 to 40 figures with majestic auras lunged at Wang Chong like a storm. These people made no attempt to conceal their killing intent. In the howling winds, Wang Chong could tell at a glance that these people were from Uzan, Western Turks, Gogurians, and Mengshizhao. The wedding of Wang Chong and Su Yichin had attracted the attention of all the Hu experts from the surrounding countries. Long live the Great Snow Mountain! For the great Turkic war god! Kill Wang Chong and avenge His Majesty! His Majesty has ordered all Gogurian warriors to kill the king of foreign lands at all costs. Roars of Hu resounded through the world, and at this moment, Wang Chong was the undisputed center of the street. Hurry and report to the city guards. These who are rebelling. Crazy, truly crazy. They dare to attack the king of foreign lands. All around, the crowd was greatly impacted and shocked. The entire scene was in a state of panic and chaos. But distant water could not quench a present thirst. The city guards would need at least 5 minutes to arrive, but Wang Chong did not have much time. The Hu experts in the sky were charging at him like a storm, and in his current state, Wang Chong could not stop them. He had consumed a great deal of stellar energy in the previous battle, and his dantian and meridians were still throbbing with pain. Wang Chong's eyes were cold, but in this situation he had actually calmed down. His hands fell to his sides, and he spread his energy to his limbs and bones as if he had given up all resistance. All the Hu experts were perplexed by this sight. No matter what, Wang Chong's reaction was not what they had imagined. But Wang Chong had always been a thorn in the side of the countries bordering the Tang dynasty. Every day that Wang Chong did not die would be another day of unease for these countries. Thus, for this mission, everyone had received a death order. No matter what price they had to pay, they had to kill this young war god of the Tang dynasty. Kill him. The sky flashed with light, and various beams of stellar energy howled toward Wang Chong. But just when it seemed like Wang Chong was about to die to the top-class experts dispatched by the countries bordering the Tang dynasty, the situation suddenly changed. Buzz! The world suddenly fell silent, and all sounds disappeared. Even the thousands of stellar energy torrents in the sky seemed to have come to a standstill. Everyone in the vicinity of the Wang family residence felt a strange sensation in their hearts. Bang! In the blink of an eye, a shocking strand of sword chi suddenly shot out. The sword chi was as heavy as a mountain, and as soon as it appeared, it immediately stretched for several thousand meters. The terrifying sword chi rushed into the sky, carving out a straight path in the air above the Wang family estate. The majestic sword chi was vast and dignified, divine and sharp. The moment it appeared, it caused all the attacks in the world to lose their luster. The dazzling light of this sword was like the sun and moon, instantly drowning out all other light. But in the next moment, something that terrified everyone occurred. The mysterious and terrifying sword chi suddenly split into countless tiny strands of sword chi. In just a few seconds, countless strands of sword chi exploded forward, each one aimed at a Hu expert from a foreign region. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Blood sprayed as the powerful Hu experts were like ragdolls, pierced through by the sharp sword chi. One by one, they dropped from the sky like wooden stakes. Before their bodies even hit the ground, they had already lost all signs of life. Bang bang bang. In front of the gate of the Wang family residence, the corpses of 30 to 40 Hu martial artists fell to the ground like motionless rain. This battle had ended even faster than many people had imagined. When the battle ended, the vicinity of the Wang family residence was deathly still. Countless pairs of eyes stared at the lifeless corpses of the Hu. No one knew what had happened. After killing these Hu martial artists, that vast sword chi had also vanished. Chapter 1489. Chapter 1358. Venerable Senior Su. This thought flitted through Wang Chong's mind. In the entire world, the only person whose sword could possess such power and easily kill top-class experts was that god of the sword, the Tang dynasty's war god So Yongsun. Although So Yongsun had never admitted it, nor had he ever gone through the formalities of master and disciple with Wang Chong, deep in his heart, Wang Chong had long ago begun to regard him as his second master. This was Wang Chong's first marriage, and he was marrying the daughter of the Su clan, Su Yiqin. How could Wang Chong not invite So Yongsun over for such a major event? But his identity was far too special, and it was simply unsuitable for him to appear in front of so many people. Thus, Wang Chong had arranged for him to stay in his residence. So Yongsun had sensed that Wang Chong was in danger and had taken the initiative to intervene. Who dares to injure my disciple? It was also at this moment that a loud shout rang out. At the same time that the sword chi dissipated, another shout rang out. In an instant, the entire Wang clan's main gate was filled with green clouds. That terrifying aura seemed to want to destroy the entire world. Boom! A massive azure hand descended, pulverizing some of the men in black who had managed to escape this calamity. This palm was imbued with fury, and the strength behind it was so great that the earth began to hum and tremble as if it would split apart. Run! Seeing such a horrifying scene, the faces of all the surviving black-robed men changed greatly. Without thinking, they immediately scattered in all directions like birds and beasts. Chong, how are you? With a familiar and concerned voice, Wang Chong's master, the evil emperor, flew over the crowd like a bolt of lightning and landed in front of Wang Chong. Master, I'm fine. Seeing his master suddenly rush over, Wang Chong relaxed and gave a long sigh of relief. With master around, this matter was already settled. The bride has arrived. At this moment, a loud shout was heard from afar. Why is there another bride? What's going on? Hearing this voice, everyone looked at each other. They had no idea what was going on. Only Wang Chong smiled and said nothing. Soon after, in just a short while, another bridal procession came from afar, beating gongs and drums. The same large red gilded palanquin, the same Su family insignia, the same red robes, the same bridal procession, they looked no different from the previous group. Only Wang Chong was looking at the chief of Wushang, who was riding on a brown horse at the front of the wedding procession. He smiled. This time, it was the real wedding procession. Many matters were not as complicated as they seemed. With the arrival of the chief of Wushang and the evil emperor, many secrets were immediately revealed. These men in black were truly bold to the extreme. They had actually disguised themselves as an assassin team identical to the Su clan's bridal procession, and at the same time, they had sent another group of people to ambush the real bridal procession, delaying it so that they could lead their men to attack Wang Chong. Fortunately, the Wushang village chief and the demonic emperor old man had placed great importance on Wang Chong's marriage, and the two of them had promptly arrived to resolve the crisis. Fortunately, although it had been dangerous, it had been more daunting than dangerous. Other than Wang Chong, who had been injured, only Su Kui and the others had been slightly injured. The scars of the battle in front of the Wang family residence were quickly swept away, and the wedding proceeded as usual. The joyous atmosphere once more began to spread through the capital. Wang Chong took out the wedding scale, parted the curtain, and used it to take Su Yichin's soft hand into the residence. Behind them, blessings and cheers filled the air. The entire Wang family residence was abuzz with gongs and drums, and the festive atmosphere continued from morning until late at night. The entire capital was enthusiastically discussing the marriage of this golden boy and jade girl. This was truly the wedding of the century. Late at night, in the stillness of the night, candles burned brightly in Wang Chong's room. A warm and sweet aura flowed through the air. In the flickering red candlelight, Wang Chong, dressed in a red ceremonial robe, slowly extended a wedding scale into the red veil of the beautiful woman. With a light flick, a soft and silky red veil slid over the pair of snow-white hands. In a flash, a fragrant fragrance wafted into his nose. In the candlelight, Wang Chong finally got a clear view of his beloved's face. This was the first time Wang Chong had seen Su Yichin appear in front of him as a bride. In the enchanting candlelight, Su Yichin's head was lowered, bashful and breathtakingly beautiful. When Wang Chong looked over, her face was flushed red, her beautiful eyes darting left and right as if subconsciously avoiding Wang Chong's figure, not daring to look at his face. In the eyes of everyone, Su Yichin had always been a strategist, capable of determining victory from 1,000 li away, forever wise and farsighted, the queen of logistics who could arrange everything in an orderly manner. Even though the two of them were together on the orders of their parents, when the day really came, Su Yichin was at a loss as to what to do. She was extremely shy, but even so, her every move and action tugged at people's hearts, making them want to pull her into their embrace. On this night, besides Wang Chong, who else could see this delicate side of Su Yichin? Wang Chong did not step forward to comfort her. He looked at Su Yichin, a trace of contemplation in his eyes, but it only lasted for an instant before vanishing. Yichin, from today onwards, you are a member of the Wang family. As long as I, Wang Chong, am here, no matter what you do in the future, I will always be your strongest shield. Wang Chong stepped forward and gently pulled up that pair of slightly trembling hands that were folded together, not knowing where to put them. Giving her the greatest sense of security was the only thing Wang Chong could do right now. Hearing these words, Su Yichin seemed to think of something. She looked up at Wang Chong, her eyes moist. I believe you. A single sentence contained 1,000 words. A single gaze carried the weight of 1,000 autumns and 10,000 generations. In the candlelight, the two slowly approached each other and hugged each other. At this time, silence spoke louder than words. However, Wang Chong did not see that when the two of them hugged each other and turned their backs on each other, the tenderness in Su Yichin's eyes suddenly vanished, replaced by an icy chill. A cold, killing intent flashed through her eyes, not leaking out in the slightest. In that moment, Su Yichin's appearance blurred, as if a bucket of water had been poured over a landscape painting. As the two of them were at their most tender and sweet, one of Su Yichin's arms suddenly transformed into a sword that ruthlessly thrust towards Wang Chong's back. But the weird thing was that the whole process was so obvious that if it were any other time, Wang Chong would have noticed it a long time ago. However, even though Wang Chong was very close to her, he did not feel anything at all. It was as if all the aura and changes of Su Yiqin had been sealed inside her body and would not be leaked at all. Not only that, her movements and aura were completely integrated with the environment, making her look extremely natural. The sword-like arms were getting closer and closer to Wang Chong's back. It seemed that Wang Chong was about to die under Su Yiqin's sword, which pierced through his vitals. But in the next moment, puff, a slender palm with distinct joints and fingers, with a spray of blood, suddenly pierced through Su Yiqin's back and out. Su Yiqin's body stiffened. Her eyes widened, and the arm that had turned into a sword and stabbed towards Wang Chong's back came to an abrupt halt. Big Brother Chong. Su Yiqin staggered and pushed Wang Chong away, her face filled with disbelief. Why? In the flickering candlelight, Su Yiqin clutched her chest, her face deathly pale and filled with confusion. It seemed that she could not believe that Wang Chong would kill her. The room was deathly silent, the celebratory red color in the room a stark contrast to the blood, cold, and despair. Unlike Su Yiqin's shock, fear, and disbelief, Wang Chong, dressed in a bright red suit, appeared extremely calm. He looked at Su Yiqin as if he were looking at a stranger, the tenderness and sweetness from before gone. Although I don't know how you did it, you are not Qin. Wang Chong slowly stood up, his eyes icy. Upon hearing Wang Chong's words, Su Yiqin's hairpins swayed in the wind. Clutching her chest, she took several more steps back as if she had received an even greater blow. Brother Chong, what are you saying? I'm Qin. Do you think that I'm also a fake? Do you think that I'm also an assassin? Her lips were trembling, and there was a deep sense of despair in her big eyes. Don't act anymore. Although you're not one of those assassins in black, you're also not Qin. The reason I didn't attack before wasn't because I was truly immersed in the illusion and didn't see through you. It was just that I wasn't willing to attack Qin. Wang Chong held his hands behind his back and calmly said, In addition, Wang Chong looked around at the tables, chairs, and curtains, as well as the red silk, the festive chests, and the red candles burning in the corners. Truly formidable. If I'm not mistaken, these things, and this entire world, are all illusions created by you. What did you say? Su Yiqin trembled, apparently shaken by Wang Chong's words. Soon, tears began to flow down her cheeks. Su Yiqin shook her head, appearing heartbroken. You've gone mad, you've really gone mad. I took care of you while you fainted for 7 days and 7 nights. I told the madam and the doctor that you were fine, that everything was fine. I didn't think that you would suspect that I was fake, but that you would suspect that the entire world was fake, that it was all an illusion. Chapter 1490. Translated by Hypersheep 325. Wang Chong's expression was cold as he thrust a palm at Su Yiqin. Seeing that Wang Chong was completely unmoved, Su Yiqin finally paled. Swish. Before Wang Chong's stellar energy could strike, her body slid backward. Wang Chong, I didn't think that you would be so stubborn. My words have no effect on you at all. Su Yiqin put some distance between her and Wang Chong, her back to the door, her bearing completely different from her previous gentle and virtuous self. Her voice was hoarse, brimming with resentment and hatred, and it was simply frightening. And the berserk and frenzied killing intent she exuded was even more frightening. The real Su Yiqin definitely did not have this sort of demeanor, much less this frightening. It was obvious that the identity of this Su Yiqin had already been exposed. But there's still one thing I don't understand. This world is so solid that it has everything. There can't be any flaws. Just how did you see that this world is fake? Su Yiqin somewhat hysterically stared at Wang Chong. Her appearance was changing more and more, and it was not just her demeanor that was changing. Even the color of her eyes was faintly tinged with a dark green. Hey, is that true? Wang Chong coldly sneered. The distance between the western regions and the capital is 10,000 li. It would take more than a month to reach the capital. Gao Xianji only used a measly 7 days to reach the capital from his demotion. Even if he flew, he probably wouldn't be able to reach the capital, right? Buzz! That one sentence was like a sharp arrow piercing through her heart. Su Qichin, or rather, the person who had created the entire world, was stunned. She was like a punctured ball, and she was so stunned that she couldn't say a single word. Everything had its flaws, but he had always believed that his world was so real that it was no different from the real world. However, Wang Chang's words completely shattered his confidence. He had never thought that the key flaw that allowed Wang Chong to see through this world was actually this. What's real is real, and what's fake is fake. A real world was not as simple as temperature, humidity, touch, smell, and taste. There were many other aspects, such as space, distance, emotions, and reactions. No matter how realistic and perfect you made it, there would definitely be loopholes and flaws. If there were only flaws, then it couldn't be real. What's fake will always be fake. Wang Chong blushed. The moment he woke up, there was a moment when he almost believed that he had been possessed by the devil in the study and had been unconscious for 7 days and 7 nights. All the journey to the northwest was just a delusion he had experienced in his sleep, a big dream. However, Wang Chong still felt that something was wrong. When Gao Xianji appeared with Cheng Qianli, Wang Chong almost immediately understood the truth of everything. However, this kind of realistic illusion was too rare, and too unbelievable. That kind of realism was enough to make any powerful mind power warlock, including Wang Chong himself, gasp in amazement. He might not even encounter such a thing once in his life. Moreover, there was a huge range of mind prohibition in the underground cave. Until now, Wang Chong had no idea how the other party did it. He could actually pull a mind power master of his level into his illusory world. Almost instinctively, Wang Chong did not want to easily miss this opportunity to learn and observe. Until the other party controlled his mother to say that he married Su Yiqin and disguised himself as Su Yiqin. This was something that Wang Chong could not tolerate. If there is no accident, my real body should still be trapped by you in that underground cave, 16,000 to 17,000 meters deep. The last sentence, Wang Chong said calmly. So that's how it is, Su Yiqin muttered to herself, completely ignoring Wang Chong's words. Following her words, the whole room suddenly shook. Peng, an exquisite white porcelain carved teapot on the table, was the first to explode. Then kacha. The wooden walls in the 4 corners of the room, starting from the base of the wall, suddenly cracked into countless cracks, and these cracks spread at an astonishing speed to the entire room. Immediately after, bang, the black sandalwood table 3 or 4 steps away from Wang Chong suddenly exploded into pieces. Without any external force, it quickly disappeared into the air like a wisp of smoke. In the room, more and more strange things kept happening. The bright red festive silk, and all kinds of curtains that covered the whole room quickly disappeared like snow melting under the sun. And in the 4 corners of the room, the big red candles that were as thick as a child's arm were extinguished one after another. And more changes were still happening. A huge crack ran through the whole room, tearing Wang Chong's room apart. And between Wang Chong and Su Yiqin, the ground was torn, and a huge trench appeared between the two of them. The black crack was bottomless, like a huge mouth that swallowed both sides, and where the crack extended, all the wooden boards and furniture were disintegrated into the smallest particles. And at this moment, with the study where Wang Chong was in as the center, looking across the whole imperial capital and the vast and boundless world, rumbling sounds came from the whole world, and the originally solid world suddenly showed signs of collapsing. And the first to collapse was the sun in the sky. With a heaven-shaking boom, that blazing sun that illuminated the entire world was instantly reduced to a simple white light source, and its light was growing dimmer and dimmer. At the edge of the world, the earth rumbled and the ground began to cave in, and even the walls at the very edge of the capital began to crumble. With Wang Chong's words, the entire world was on the brink of collapse. At this moment, the scenery in Wang Chong's eyes was rapidly changing. Everything was twisting and distorting, as if someone was stirring 5-colored paint together. Su Yiqin had long ago vanished, and all that was left before his eyes were the simplest and most basic of particles and blocks of color. I truly didn't think that someone would be able to undo my true dream. Su Yichin's incredulous voice resounded in Wang Chong's ears, and a moment later, endless darkness surged into his eyes. At the same time, Wang Chong could smell the thin, cold and turbid air of the underground cavern. Ah! At this moment, Wang Chong heard cries of various sizes, all of them tinged with pain. He had never heard these sounds before. Finally, Wang Chong's vision darkened as he returned to the underground cavern. The moment he opened his eyes, Wang Chong did not see the narrow passage where he had been meditating. At some point, he had appeared in a massive karst cavern the size of 6 or 7 dukedom residences. Wang Chong could sense massive stalactites hanging down from the ceiling, and beneath these stalactites, Wang Chong could see piles of corpses. These corpses seemed to belong to the martial artists who had entered the cavern even earlier. Their bones were spotted with yellow spots, and many parts of them had already decayed and turned black. And above these corpses, Wang Chong could see 300 to 400 martial artists. Some of these martial artists were sprawled on the ground, some were standing, muttering to themselves, and some were waving their sabers and swords as they roared. Their expressions were either crying or laughing, crazed or crazed. The only similarity was that their eyes were tightly shut, as if they had been bewitched by something. Swish! At almost the same time, Wang Chong felt a pain in his chest and lowered his head. With just a glance, he grimaced. How could this be? A sword wound stretched from his left shoulder to the right side of Wang Chong's chest, and along with this wound, Wang Chong's clothes had been torn. This wound was identical to the one left behind by the black-clothed man's attack in the illusory world that Wang Chong had suffered. Could it be that injuries in the illusory world can also be inflicted in the real world? How could this be? Wang Chong was also a master of psychic energy, and he had even used the blazing sun art to shatter Mazel's strongest abyssal world. But Wang Chong had only been able to use psychic energy to heavily injure his opponent. He had not been able to use the psychic energy to inflict injuries on his body. The sight before him had completely surpassed his imagination. But at this moment, Wang Chong sensed a familiar energy rushing toward him. 10 meters away from Wang Chong once more saw Su Yichin. No, he could no longer call her Su Yichin. Although the person before him was still wearing the same crimson robe as Su Yichin in the illusory world, and his hair was covered in gold and pearls, it was clear that after taking Wang Chong's attack, he could no longer maintain the same state as Su Yichin. His face was only 30% similar to Su Yichin's, but the rest of him was evil and savage, completely different from Su Yichin's. The two of them were not the same person. The surroundings were quiet, and everything seemed incomparably strange. Just who are you? No, I should say, just what are you? Wang Chong's pupils constricted, deep apprehension in his eyes. Ever since he had entered this underground cave, everything had given him an indescribably bizarre feeling. No psychic energy warlock could inflict the same damage on the real body in the illusory psychic world, and that illusory world was far too sturdy, far too real. In Wang Chong's understanding, this was not something a human psychic energy warlock could do. Not only that, from what he could see, he was also controlling the 300 to 400 martial artists in this cave, trapping their souls in that illusory world. And now that he thought about it, the narrow passage he had chosen to meditate in was probably not a real passage, but a cave he had concealed with psychic energy. Chapter 1491. Translator, Ryuxinji Editor. H2H2 Mr. Wang Chong said it was a creature because he wasn't sure what it was. Moreover, Wang Chong was sure that this Su Yichin was not her true appearance. Her crimson robes and the golden hairpin in her hair were exactly the same as in the illusory world. This was simply impossible. In other words, even though he had heavily injured her, her psychic energy was still affecting him after he returned to the psychic world. It was just that the effect was not as deep. Ha! Truly an inconceivable ant. The real world has abandoned you, but this illusory dream will make everything come true for you. Don't you like that woman? Are you not satisfied with me having you join together? Don't resist any longer. Let your psychic energy fuse with mine. Just like rainwater merging into the ocean, You, me, and all the martial artists will become one and create a new world. We can create everything you want in this new world. Haven't you already seen the truth of that world? I can let you defeat the Confucian sect and destroy all the human empires, pulverizing them into powder. Wouldn't it be wonderful to live the rest of your life in this dream? At this moment, the existence that looked somewhat similar to Su Yichin spoke once more, its voice suffused with a bewitching power. That's your dream, not mine. You've controlled so many martial artists and killed so many people. No matter what you are, only death awaits you. Wang Chong coldly said. Bzz. The stellar energy in Wang Chong's body rumbled. Without the slightest hesitation, a vast energy erupted from his body and locked onto the bizarre existence. From the current situation, it could be seen that all the martial artists in the cave had fallen into a dream. He was probably the only one who could deal with this creature. Moreover, he had just broken the illusory world and was probably heavily injured. There was no way for him to bring Wang Chong back into the psychic world, so this was the best time to kill it. As expected, when the creature saw Wang Chong attack, a hint of fear appeared in its eyes. As expected, Wang Chong sneered. All psychic energy practitioners had an extremely high chance of not being skilled in close combat. Mazel, for example, had an enormous amount of psychic energy, but his close combat ability was not worth mentioning. Although the creature in front of him had an incomparably strong mental strength that surpassed that of anyone that Wang Chong knew, it was obvious that its melee combat ability was not too outstanding. And your thinking is too simple. So what if you see through my illusory world? Do you really think I can't do anything to you? Since you're not willing to cooperate, then I'll simply devour your mental strength and force you to become one with me. In the next moment, before Wang Chong could launch an attack, that person took the initiative to attack Wang Chong. Rumble. There was a flash of light, and the rings of light shook. Boundless stellar energy that was as hard as steel entered Xiao Chen's ears. As Wang Chong watched, the martial artists behind him suddenly opened their eyes. Their gazes were dull and lifeless, as if they had been completely under someone's control. Bang! 7 or 8 martial artists leaped forward and lunged at Wang Chong. Clang, clang, clang. Clang, clang, clang. With the clanging of swords and sabers, the 3-foot-long swords slashed at Wang Chong like a school of sharks. As these sabers and swords attacked, a martial artist in his 30s or 40s roared, his voice like that of a man, yet not a beast. The veins on his arms bulged, and with a wave of his hand, roiling stellar energy condensed into a massive fist that charged at Wang Chong. If Wang Chong were to be struck by this punch, he would surely die. At almost the same time, another 7 or 8 martial artists roared and lunged at Wang Chong from behind. In the blink of an eye, Wang Chong was surrounded. This person could drag his target into an illusory world, making it difficult to distinguish between the real and the fake. In the real world, he could control his target and even use their supreme techniques. This was something that Wang Chong had not expected. But it only took a moment for Wang Chong to react. Peng, his body exploded, and like a swimming fish, he escaped from that tiny gap before the encirclement. It was just a small change, but it immediately led to a completely different result. Bang, bang, bang. Having lost sight of Wang Chong, the martial artists were unable to dodge in time and crashed into each other. The battlefield immediately descended into chaos. As expected, only Wang Chong was unsurprised by this result. That person could create illusory worlds and control people's psychic energy. Given the abilities he had displayed, he could naturally understand the martial arts of these martial artists, allowing them to display their full strength. However, understanding the opponent's martial arts was one thing, but mastering the opponent's combat skills and on-the-spot reactions, integrating them into one, that was another. This minuscule difference might have been negligible against other martial artists, but against a top-class expert like Wang Chong, this minuscule difference would result in a completely different outcome. It's your turn. Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong's eyes flashed with cold light, and he shot forward like a lightning bolt, his body and sword becoming one as he shot toward his opponent. Clang! In a flash of light, a sword flew up from below and accurately struck the tip of Wang Chong's sword. The two enormous energies were evenly matched, with neither able to gain the upper hand. However, the clash of stellar energy sent both Wang Chong and his opponent flying. Bang! Wang Chong's feet landed on the ground, his shoulders swaying. How is this possible? A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Wang Chong's heart was in turmoil, and he suddenly felt an intense shock. At his level of cultivation, even if his strength had been reduced, his vision, knowledge, and reaction time were still there. It was not a problem of his mental strength being inaccurate, but it was impossible for him to hit the tip of his sword with a single strike. Not only that, in the instant the stellar energy had vibrated, the two had only exchanged a single blow, but in reality, the stellar energy in their bodies had surged out along their swords. In a short period of time, they had clashed dozens of times. But when Wang Chong raised his head and looked at his opponent, there was a deep shock in his eyes. A dozen or so meters away from Wang Chong, a figure stood. The original Su Yiqin had disappeared, and in its place was another Wang Chong. The face was exactly the same, and the clothes were exactly the same. However, compared to Wang Chong, the aura was less heavy and solid. Even though Wang Chong had seen his opponent's ability before and was mentally prepared, when he saw this scene, he could not help but be stunned. Do you really think I can't do anything to you? Now, I'll use your ability to completely defeat you. The Wang Chong opposite him smiled slightly, his expression extremely strange. Bang! In the next moment, before Wang Chong could make a move, the Wang Chong opposite him swayed and immediately pounced forward, taking the initiative to attack. Qi, before the person arrived, the sword Qi arrived first. There was a burst of force that tore through the air, and the second Wang Chong flicked his fingers, and in the blink of an eye, bolts of God and Demon obliteration sword Qi shot out. The bolts of milky white sword Qi were extremely sharp, and they crisscrossed in the void, exploding toward the various vital points on Wang Chong's body. Apart from the color being slightly dimmer, the nature, power, and degree of sharpness of these obliteration sword Qi were actually exactly the same as Wang Chong's. Boom, there was a series of explosions, and countless gravel flew into the sky. Wang Chong avoided the opponent's heavy attack by a hair's breadth. How powerful! I didn't expect an ant like you to be completely different from the others. To actually have so many martial arts on you. Try this. Before the voice faded away, the second Wang Chong figure suddenly blurred, and black smoke came out of his body. In just an instant he disappeared into the void. Void evasion. Seeing this scene, Wang Chong's eyelids twitched. The scene in front of him was really unimaginable. Wang Chong had the experience of 2 lives, and could be said to be very knowledgeable. In this world, there were probably very few things that could surprise him like this. However, everything in front of him was really beyond his imagination. The art of God and Demon obliteration was an ultimate technique that he had inherited from the Tang dynasty's god of war, So Yongsun. It was one of the top 10 ultimate techniques of the Central Plains, and this sword technique was extremely difficult to cultivate. As for void evasion, it was not long ago when the Zhengqi League was attacked by the Men in Black. Wang Chong had taken this ultimate technique from the leader of the Men in Black. It had not been long since Wang Chong had successfully cultivated this ultimate technique. Yet, the opponent could actually use Wang Chong's ultimate technique without cultivating it. Even if it was just an imitation, it was enough to shock people. Moreover, in terms of nature, the opponent was using the exact same technique as him. Swoosh! Without any hesitation, Wang Chong's body swayed, and he also used void evasion. His entire body was constantly changing, and like green smoke, it was completely impossible to catch him. As his body merged into the void, Wang Chong flicked his fingers repeatedly, and bursts of obliteration sword Qi burst out, intertwining with the opponent's sword Qi. Boom! Just as the two of them crossed each other, Wang Chong clenched his fingers into a fist and punched fiercely in front of him. As the punch was thrown, airwaves rolled in the void, and countless green clouds gathered, causing Wang Chong's fist to look like a green mountain, with a heavy feeling like a mountain. The power of his entire body's fist also increased significantly, making it difficult to block. This was what Wang Chong had comprehended and created from the giant green hands that his master, the evil emperor, often used. When he attacked, he could absorb the spiritual energy in the void, increasing the power of his attack by at least 40 to 50%. However, in the next moment, the clouds rolled, and an identical green iron fist appeared in front of him, colliding heavily with Wang Chong's fist in the void. Chapter 1492. How could it be like this? Wang Chong stood up from the ground, his complexion twisted into an ugly grimace. What was happening before him could no longer be explained by imitation. It was no longer within the realm of martial arts. Wang Chong didn't even know if he was fighting a human. There's also this. So you had so many treasures on you. While Wang Chong was still lost in the thought that his opponent could imitate all of his martial arts, that person's voice resounded in his ear once more. Boom, the entire underground cavern shook with a loud rumble, and the violent waves of air shook the long stalactites hanging down from above. There was a flash of light. In this endless darkness, two rays of light, one gold and one silver, suddenly appeared. Around the second, Wang Chong, two waves of qi, one yin and one yang, shot out in a spiral. At the same time, a vast qi filled the air. Behind that person, a sun and a moon appeared at the same time. The moment this image of the sun and moon appeared, the body of the second, Wang Chong, exploded with a suction like that of a black hole. All the qi in the cavern began to tremble and spin, the momentum causing one to pale in comparison. Great yin-yang heaven creation art. This time, before Wang Chong could act, the second, Wang Chong, had already used the greatest evil art in the world, the great yin-yang heaven creation art. Seeing that familiar sun and moon, Wang Chong's heart instantly sank to the bottom. The annihilation sword qi that he had inherited from old senior Su had not yet reached the point of perfection. It was too immature, and the time he had spent learning the void movement technique was too short. Moreover, it was not an offensive martial art, but a movement technique. As for the blue metal fist that he had learned from the demonic emperor, it was still incomplete. To Wang Chong, the fact that his opponent had used all of his supreme arts was only difficult for him to accept. The true threat was not that great. Only the great yin-yang heaven creation art was different. This world's #1 evil art was chosen by Wang Chong for himself back then. Its power was immense, and it could allow him to advance by leaps and bounds in the shortest time possible. It was a dermic formulation that made use of every second to protect the world to rapidly increase his strength. Out of all of Wang Chong's techniques, he had the most profound cultivation of this technique. Wang Chong had never thought that his opponent would be able to use this ultimate technique. What the hell is this thing? Wang Chong was shocked. He didn't believe that any martial artist could do this. If he was really that powerful, he wouldn't need to use mind control at all. Moreover, Wang Chong had never heard of such a secret art that could allow one to directly obtain such an ability without cultivating it. None of the 10 great absolute arts had such an ability. Something's wrong. But very quickly, Wang Chong's mind flashed and he immediately felt that something was wrong. The other party's ability was not innate. All of his abilities came from imitating his opponents. If his opponent was really so powerful that he could perfectly imitate his body, then in other words, his opponent, Wang Chong's attention immediately shifted from the majestic yin-yang illusions outside his opponent's body to his opponent's body. As expected, in the next moment, Wang Chong's lips curled into an almost imperceptible smile. As expected, his opponent's meridians were in the same disorder as his own. He had overestimated this unknown existence. Although his opponent could imitate his martial arts at will, he wasn't actually as powerful as he seemed. No, from a certain perspective, Wang Chong felt that his opponent didn't even understand martial arts. Bang! Wang Chong stamped his foot, and rings of light shot out from his feet. At the same time, he opened his right hand, and a sword flew into it. Then, Wang Chong's body blurred, and he shot forward. Using the void movement technique, he appeared diagonally to his opponent's side and attacked. Great yin-yang art. Without the slightest hesitation, the second-ranked, Wang Chong, gave an evil laugh. With a wave of his hand, he created a ball of yin and yang, the energy of extreme yin and extreme yang. In the end, it created a pure, pulverizing energy. Boom! An enormous energy immediately sent Wang Chong flying. As for the second, Wang Chong, he sneered coldly and immediately pounced forward. At the same time, the other controlled martial artists let out roars that were neither human nor beast as they madly lunged at Wang Chong. With so many people working together, Wang Chong immediately found himself in a perilous situation. But Wang Chong's expression was calm, his eyes bright, and he remained unmoved. Peng, his right hand slapped the ground below him, and he immediately shot up, flying close to the ground like a swallow. Before the surrounding experts could surround him, he was the first to charge out of the encirclement. Clang! His sword gave off a dragon's roar, radiating a beautiful but dangerous light. The sword in Wang Chong's hand shot out like a venomous snake, circling around another direction and aiming straight for the second, Wang Chong's left groin. Be careful of learning to walk like a child. There are some things that you can't learn. Wang Chong's voice resounded through the air. His figure constantly changed, sometimes to the east, sometimes to the west, sometimes to the front, sometimes to the back, just like a ghost. Not only did Wang Chong not retreat in the face of the combined assault of the martial artists, he even took the initiative to attack. Swish! Blood spurted out of his body. The intense battle had torn open the wound on Wang Chong's chest that he had suffered in the illusory world. "Ha, Aunt, there's nothing that I can't learn from you. You're no match for me." The second, Wang Chong's voice resounded through the air. He had no intention of dodging Wang Chong's attack. Vast heaven-earth art. Without the slightest hesitation, the second, Wang Chong, used the second move of the great yin-yang heaven creation art. A majestic energy surged forward, covering the heavens and earth as it attacked the approaching Wang Chong on the left. But Wang Chong seemed to have expected this. His attack seemed fierce, but it was actually frozen in place, as if he had no intention of actually attacking. Before the power of the vast heaven-earth art could explode, Wang Chong seemed to have predicted it, and his body shot backward at an even faster speed than when he had come. Rumble! Dust churned as stellar energy exploded, pulverizing the stalactites hanging down from the cavern. Even the skeletons on the ground and the bewitched martial artists were sent flying. Although Wang Chong had been prepared, it was not so easy to escape from the vast heaven-earth art. Bang! As he flew backward, Wang Chong was swept up by the shockwaves of the vast heaven-earth art. His body trembled, and he immediately lost control of himself. Boom! He was sent flying into the cave wall, leaving a human-shaped impression on it. Dust and gravel continued to fall from above. He's really powerful. To think that the vast heaven-earth art could be used to such a level. Wang Chong wiped the blood from his mouth and said to himself. His chest had already been injured, and now that he had been struck by the vast heaven-earth art, his injuries worsened. Meanwhile, Wang Chong's dantian throbbed with pain. He had not yet recovered from his cultivation defect, and now that he had used stellar energy to fight, his injuries had worsened. But even so, Wang Chong's eyes were bright, and he showed no sign of defeat. It's about time. Only one move remains. Wang Chong said to himself as he looked at the second, Wang Chong. Great destruction art. Wang Chong took a step forward, once more launching an attack. An enormous ripple of stellar energy exploded from his body. This energy was of extreme yin and yang, and it was actually the great yin-yang heaven creation art. At this moment, the two Wang Chongs began to exude the same ripples of energy. Great destruction art? We can't. Let us see whose great art of destruction is stronger. A strange light flashed through the eyes of the second Wang Chong. Without hesitation, the stellar energy in his body exploded, and a profound, pure, dark, and powerful energy of destruction erupted from his body. Boom! In a flash of light, the second Wang Chong arrived first. His body pushed off the ground, and while he was still in the air around him began to twist and distort. An enormous energy of destruction rippled through his body, about to erupt like a volcano. In Wang Chang's current condition, if he was struck by this attack, even if he didn't die, he would be heavily injured. Success. To Wang Chang's surprise, he was delighted to see the other party hovering in the air, seemingly capable of destroying the world. Busy, the ripples of energy from the great yin-yang heaven creation art that he had just gathered completely dissipated. Wang Chang's body shot forward, and instead of advancing, he retreated into a cave behind him, putting some distance between him and the second, Wang Chong. The second, Wang Chong, was clearly taken aback by this sight. It was clear that Wang Chang's indomitable momentum and his current performance made it impossible for anyone to connect them to the same person. But before the second, Wang Chong, could react, he heard Wang Chang's voice. "You're dead." The second, Wang Chong, grimaced, and before he could react, an intense pain came from all over his body. His seemingly majestic stellar energy and his meridians were suddenly thrown into chaos. The great destruction art that he had just gathered also collapsed, and the backlash began to devour him. The second, Wang Chong, vomited a mouthful of blood, screamed, and dropped to the ground. As expected, more than 30 meters away, Wang Chang's eyes flashed as he saw this. Without the slightest hesitation, the second, Wang Chong, dropped to the ground. Wang Chong finally attacked. His body blurred as he used the void movement technique. As he passed through the cave, he casually grabbed a sword, and with a squelch, he thrust it through the body of the second, Wang Chong. Chapter 1493. How could this be? How could this be? Why can't I use your martial arts? This is impossible. The body of the second, Wang Chong, was curled up like a prawn. His vitals had been pierced by a sword, and his hands were still clutching one of Wang Chang's arms. His body was trembling incessantly. A deep shock appeared on his face. He seemed to be completely immersed in the final moment of stellar energy backlash. He did not even care about Wang Chang's sword that had pierced through his vitals. There is no human in this world that I cannot control, no martial arts that I cannot imitate, and no supreme technique that I cannot use. The second muttered to himself, blood gushing from the corner of his mouth. His mind was completely immersed in the massive transformation that was occurring within his body. You think too highly of yourself. You don't understand martial arts at all. This is just a simple imitation. Wang Chong looked at his opponent and suddenly spoke. A deep pity appeared in Wang Chang's eyes as he looked at this unknown creature. His abilities were truly formidable, but his flaws were equally obvious. Long before I entered this place, I had already suffered a cultivation defect. My meridians were in chaos and my stellar energy was running wild. It's one thing for you to imitate my strongest great yin-yang heaven creation art, but you even imitated my cultivation defect. Although I don't know what you are, it's clear that you don't even have the most basic knowledge of martial arts. You don't even know what stellar energy is or how to fight, do you? So that's how it is? The second, Wang Chong, slowly raised his head, a look of relief in his eyes. His appearance was exactly the same as Wang Chang's, but at this moment, it was as if the light was warping and the image was distorted, no longer able to maintain its original appearance. Layers of light continued to dissipate, as if a veil had been torn away, and the creature before them finally revealed its true appearance. Yes, it could only be called a creature, because the existence before him had completely surpassed Wang Chang's understanding. Even with the memories of 2 lives and vast knowledge, Wang Chong had never imagined that such a creature existed in this world. Its body was dark and covered in fur. It looked like an otter that walked on land, but it was not exactly the same. Its body was more than 2 meters tall, like a giant calf. Moreover, its entire body was enveloped in a layer of black mist that resembled burning flames. The most peculiar part was its head. No matter how one looked at it, the creature in front of them looked like a monster. However, its head, although some parts maintained the appearance of a beast, it had the appearance of a human face. Its eyebrows, eyes, mouth, and nose were at least 70% similar to a human's. It was so similar that Wang Chong couldn't tell its original appearance from its face. However, when he saw its true appearance, Wang Chong suddenly understood why the monster had stopped. He had broken its original form. Wang Chong's attack had been aimed at its abdomen, but it had actually struck its head. If he hadn't struck a fatal blow by a fluke, the battle wouldn't have ended so quickly. But don't get happy too early. A look of struggle and pain appeared on the strange creature's face. This battle is far from over. No one can defeat me. Before Wang Chong could do anything, the situation suddenly changed. An enormous aura suddenly erupted from the monster's body. Wang Chong grimaced and was just about to attack when an invisible bond swiftly linked Wang Chong and the monster together. Suddenly, the two's spiritual powers were bridged together. At the same time, bang bang bang. The martial artists in the cavern, their eyes tightly shut, began to fall to the ground like wooden pillars. As they fell to the ground, Wang Chong could clearly sense psychic energy condensing into tangible form, surging toward him and entering the body of this strange creature. Even while fighting with Wang Chong, this unknown creature had been controlling the martial artists in the cavern, causing them to fall unconscious in an illusory world. But now, in the face of an unprecedented foe like Wang Chong, this unknown creature finally chose to withdraw all its psychic energy and attack Wang Chong. Buzz. As he sensed the terrifying torrent of psychic energy in the air, Wang Chong couldn't help but grimace. His psychic power was extremely powerful. After experiencing 2 reincarnations, even Michael was impressed by his extraordinary psychic power. Wang Chong also believed himself to be extremely skilled in the field of psychic energy. But when compared to this creature, he immediately paled in comparison. The psychic energy gathering in the air was at least 10 times that of Wang Chong. This was also the first time Wang Chong had ever felt such terrifying psychic energy. "Since you destroyed my body, return it to me with your body." The unknown creature's voice resounded in Wang Chong's ears, and a moment later, that strange psychic energy surged, almost tangible, and slammed into Wang Chong's mind. At that moment, Wang Chong's body went stiff, pain and numbness spreading through his meridians, and he was rendered motionless. Not only that, Wang Chong could also sense a dark and sinister psychic energy seeping into the ground like mercury, attacking the depths of his mind from all directions. Possession. This thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind. He was no stranger to this feeling. During the Battle of Talas, when Mazel had tried to use psychic energy to control him, Wang Chong had experienced a similar feeling. However, this mental strength was more than 10 times stronger than Michael's. If Michael was the hardest rock, then the immense mental strength displayed by this unknown creature was more than 10 times denser than a well-tempered diamond. Under this terrifying attack, Wang Chong's psychic energy quickly crumbled, and he was completely incapable of blocking it. This was the first time since his reincarnation that Wang Chong had encountered such a terrifying opponent in terms of psychic energy. Forbidden art, blazing sun. Just as he was about to be possessed by this monster, Wang Chong's sea of consciousness began to rumble. At the very center of his mind energy, an incomparably scorching light suddenly erupted. Rumble. With a heaven-shaking boom, a massive sun illuminated Wang Chong's entire sea of consciousness. At this crucial moment, Wang Chong had finally used his most powerful psychic energy attack. At almost the same time, screams came from all around Wang Chong's sea of consciousness. Forbidden art, blazing sun. This was the most masculine energy that Wang Chong had imitated from the sun. It was the complete opposite of the dark and sinister nature of this unknown creature, and in terms of nature, it countered it. And with the help of this blazing sun, that strange psychic energy that could penetrate every opening was immediately suppressed. It's useless. So what if you have the power of the sun? You still can't stop me. The unknown creature's voice resounded in Wang Chong's mind, its voice vicious. Now that it was free from the restraints of his body, this monster was completely unleashed. Isn't it just the power of the sun? I can do it too. You have no secrets in front of me. Rumble. A moment later, an earth-shattering sound was suddenly heard at the edge of Wang Chong's psychic energy. As Wang Chong watched in shock, a spot of light suddenly appeared. Wang Chong's psychic energy ultimate move, the blazing sun, had appeared once again. However, this time, it was not Wang Chong who had cast the blazing sun, but the unknown mysterious creature. In an instant, a massive blazing sun illuminated the void. The corona, solar prominence, and sunspots were all present. It was exactly the same as the blazing sun constructed by Wang Chong's psychic energy. Upon seeing this, Wang Chong's heart sank. This terrifying creature had used its massive psychic energy to plunge Yangming into the psychic world it had created. Not only had the creature left a psychic brand in Yangming's mind, but it had also obtained Yangming's memories and secrets in the process. If it had not obtained the secrets of the sun from Yangming's mind, no one would have been able to cast the blazing sun forbidden technique. This was because the creatures in this world knew nothing about the sun. In an instant, Wang Chong's heart sank. This was the first time in his life that he had encountered such a troublesome opponent. It seemed like Wang Chong's powerful techniques were completely ineffective against it. Then let me see exactly how powerful you are. However, when he saw the blazing sun rising in the darkness, Wang Chong hardened his heart. This unknown creature had stimulated the arrogance in his heart. Before the unknown creature could attack, Wang Chong had already taken the initiative to control the blazing sun in his mind. Like a bolt of lightning, it ruthlessly smashed towards the second blazing sun that the mysterious creature had created. In the world of consciousness, speed and time could not be measured in the normal world. However, when Wang Chong drove the blazing sun over, even if the creature was much more powerful than Wang Chong, it could not avoid it at all. Rumble! In the next moment, it was as if the sky was falling and the earth was splitting apart. Two blazing suns that emitted a temperature of hundreds of thousands of degrees collided heavily in the world of consciousness. No one could describe the momentum of that moment. Even if the creature's psychic energy was much greater than Wang Chong's, it was greatly shaken by the impact of this top-notch forbidden technique, just like Wang Chong. And, you can't defeat me. Even the gods and demons of ancient times could not destroy me, let alone an insignificant human like you. Chapter 1494. Boom, 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 boom. Two illusionary suns collided violently, and the shockwaves from the collision battered the spiritual worlds of the two of them. The battle between Wang Chong and the unknown creature had reached its climax. Invasion and counter-invasion, possession and counter-possession, occupation and counter-occupation, both of them had given their all in this battle. Although his mind power was far inferior to the other parties, Wang Chong knew that if he couldn't withstand the other party's mind power attack, he would really be possessed by the creature and be trapped underground forever. You want to possess my body? Let's see if you have the ability to do so. Wang Chong's mind power was frantically devouring him. Although his strength was inferior to the other parties, the ferocity of Wang Chong's attack was far superior to that of the creatures. The battle between the two of them was extremely intense in the mind power world. As the mind power battle intensified, the memories of the two of them inevitably intertwined. Interesting, really interesting. You actually have the memories of two people. No, both of them are you. One of you actually has two completely different lives. How is this possible? That's not right. You actually have another memory? How is this possible? This is the first time I've seen a human hide so many secrets. I want to see what else you're hiding. The voice of the unknown creature resounded throughout the void. The first time it had trapped Wang Chong in its own illusory world, it had only obtained the most superficial memories of Wang Chong, such as martial arts and combat experience. However, this time, it had truly probed into the deepest and most important secrets of Wang Chong's mind. Everyone possessed a strong sense of vigilance and would self-select information to hide the deepest and most important memories in the deepest recesses of one's mind. These were all secrets that the creature had never known before. However, when it peeked into the deepest secrets of Wang Chong's mind, even the creature that had lived for a long time was deeply shocked. The secrets of this human had already surpassed its imagination. It seemed like a person actually had 2 or even 3 completely different lives. This was completely unfathomable. Even the creature had never seen such a thing before. Without hesitation, The creature immediately intensified its attack. A massive pressure like a mountain pressed down on Wang Chong from all directions. Under the attack of the creature, Wang Chong retreated step by step. It seemed like he couldn't hold on at all. "Show me everything you have." The creature's maniacal voice resounded throughout the world. No creature could stop it, not in the past and not in the future. It could almost see Wang Chong completely consumed by it. It was determined to obtain this human. In the depths of its heart, it had a vague feeling that this mysterious human might very well possess the secret of rebirth. However, the creature did not know that despite facing the great danger of being possessed, Wang Chong remained calm and continued to resist. His body stood motionless in the cave, and there was no sign of panic on his face. On the contrary, when he opened his eyes, stellar energy fluctuated in his eyes, and they were enveloped by a strange light. If Wang Chong's personal attendants, such as Su Kui, were present, they would be able to recognize that Wang Chong's expression and aura fluctuations were a sign that he could see through the origin world of air. Buzz! Just as the creature was feeling smug, a voice suddenly rang out in its mind. "This battle is far from over. It's too early for you to be celebrating." Before the voice faded away, the creature's maniacal voice and pervasive mind attacks came to an abrupt halt. How is this possible? How did you know?" For the first time, there was a hint of panic in the creature's voice. "Everything has a flaw. This should be your life core." In the huge cave, Wang Chong's right hand was extended, and a black bead was held between his index and middle fingers. Opposite him, the 2-meter-tall water tower-like creature was split in half by a sword strike. Whoosh! In just an instant, the creature's corpse was split into 2 halves and fell heavily to the ground with a thud, sending dust flying. Some of the bones that had accumulated on the ground were instantly sent flying. Amidst the monster's fallen corpse, a hole the size of the black pearl could be seen clearly on its neck. There's no living being that can maintain their spirit after receiving a fatal blow. If I'm not mistaken, you must be relying on this life core. Don't talk nonsense. This is just your guess. Even if you destroy that bead, I can still occupy your body. Is that so? Wang Chong sneered. Without the slightest hesitation, he suddenly flicked his finger on the black bead. At the same time, Wang Chong also separated a part of his mind power and bombarded the bead heavily. In an instant, there was only a shrill scream, and the creature's entire consciousness began to convulse. In this battle of mind power, it had always had the upper hand in the beginning. However, at this moment, its mind and consciousness immediately suffered a heavy blow. Wang Chong could even feel it invading his mind. The omnipresent mind power was also violently convulsing and trembling. It seemed to feel a wave of extreme pain. Wang Chong used all his strength to counterattack and attack, activating forbidden skills. The fierce battle between the scorching sun and the creature did not shake it in the slightest. But this light flick of Wang Chong's finger had dealt far more damage than Wang Chong's thousands of psychic energy attacks. With this, Wang Chong immediately knew that his judgment was correct. The origin of Qi could sense the weaknesses of the other party. This was what his master, the evil emperor, had told him. This was not the first time that Wang Chong had sensed it. Therefore, when Wang Chong entered the origin of Qi world and saw that the monster's missing corpse still had a reaction of energy, he immediately knew that this was the monster's weakness. This monster's mind power was so great that it exceeded the limits of a warrior. Even Wang Chong was no match for it. However, its life core was far from being that powerful. "I'd like to see how you're going to occupy my body." Wang Chong sneered. Without the slightest hesitation, he immediately flicked his finger again and viciously flicked the life core. Roar! In Wang Chong's mind world, Wang Chong immediately heard the monster let out another shrill scream. Its vast mind power had originally enveloped Wang Chong's mind like a tidal wave, but at this moment, it was shaking rapidly like a tidal wave. Wang Chong did not even need to deliberately check to be able to sense that its mind power was rapidly weakening. And it was weakening even more than before. In addition, the changes caused by that finger were far more than that. That monster had used its previous trick of Wang Chong into the illusory world to establish a mind bridge between itself and Wang Chong. And when the monster's mind power was injured and weakened, Wang Chong immediately discovered that, for some reason, a part of the monster's mind power had evolved into the purest, origin state and then flowed into his mind like flowing water. When Wang Chong's mind power encountered this power, it immediately absorbed it like a sponge and increased rapidly. In just a short while, Wang Chong's mind power had almost recovered to its original state and even increased. What's going on? This change greatly surprised Wang Chong, but Wang Chong pondered for a moment and immediately reacted. This is called evil retribution. Previously, you planted a seed in my consciousness and wanted to take over my body. Now, even if you want to escape, you can't. The monster had established a bridge between the two of them in Wang Chong's body. Its original intention was that even if the flesh body was destroyed, it could still successfully take over Wang Chong's body. But conversely, Wang Chong could also use this bridge to exert its influence on it. The two of them were like grasshoppers on a rope, tied together. When the monster's mind power weakened, its scattered mind power did not drift into the void, but flowed along the mind power channel that connected the two of them and surged into Wang Chong's consciousness, strengthening his sea of consciousness and mind power. How could this be? I was wrong. Let me go, I won't take over your body anymore. I'll change my body, and we'll mind our own business. There was finally a hint of panic in the monster's voice. It's too late, accept your fate. Even at this time, you still want to take over someone else's body? Wang Chong sneered. That was then and this was now. Two small flicks of his fingers allowed him to test the strength of this creature. At this point, he had the final say in how he wanted to flatten him. It was no longer up to the monster to decide. Don't be too full of yourself, Ant. If worst comes to worst, we'll die together. The monster's voice suddenly became hoarse and noisy. Wang Chong's words had instantly stimulated the hostility in its body. With a roar from the spiritual world, the monster suddenly mustered all its strength and gathered all its mind power to pounce on Wang Chong's body. Bang! In the blink of an eye, a finger that seemed as heavy as a mountain heavily struck the life core of the creature. Unlike before, this finger was extraordinarily powerful and contained a huge amount of mind power. With just one strike, the life core emitted a series of crisp sounds, showing faint signs of cracking. How could this be? I can't accept this. With a shrill cry, the strange mind power that had been pouncing on Wang Chong's consciousness like a tidal wave suddenly seemed to have suffered a heavy blow. It was torn apart and fell apart. Before it could collide with Wang Chong's consciousness, it turned into thousands of pieces amidst the screams and turned into ashes. This command from Wang Chong had dealt a heavy blow to the life core, and at the same time, it had also damaged its consciousness. This battle of great disparity in strength had ended with Wang Chong finding the life core. Chapter 1495. With an endless roar, Wang Chong saw countless figures of majestic auras on the dark and desolate land, fiercely battling around him. Each of them had a cultivation far surpassing that of an imperial great general. Martial artists rarely seen in the Tang dynasty were densely packed in this place. They furiously roared and fiercely battled, the lights of thousands of different martial arts clashing in the air, causing booms to resound through the world. Wang Chong could not see them clearly, but he could tell that these people were dressed in ancient attire and exuded a long and ancient aura. They were clearly different from the people of the present. Dark clouds covered the sky, fires blazed, and smoke rose. Ancient war banners, black and yellow in tatters, were inscribed with characters that Wang Chong did not recognize, characters that were even older than bird seal script. Clang! A martial artist wearing a yellow robe suddenly pointed his sword at the sky, his resounding voice echoing over the horizon. For the Yellow Emperor! Boom! These words caused Wang Chong's body to tremble as if he had been struck by lightning. At this moment he suddenly understood. It's the Battle of Zhualu. He had never imagined that he would be able to witness the most glorious and resplendent battle from several thousand years ago, a battle that had been called a legend of the Central Plains. It was a battle that had been called God and Demon in ancient times. Although that battle had been called the greatest battle in the history of the Central Plains, just like all other civilizations that had fallen, other than a few words and a few scattered descriptions of that era, everything else had been lost in the vast flood of history, buried in the dust of time. In fact, in some dynasties, it was directly referred to as a myth that had been passed on erroneously and was fanciful and far-fetched. Wang Chong had never imagined that he would be able to peer through the eyes of this mysterious creature and see a corner of that great battle. However, just as Wang Chong wanted to pry further and find out more about this war, the next moment his vision darkened, and the scene he saw before immediately disappeared. Soon, Wang Chong saw another scene. Around him, countless ancient experts seemed to have been possessed as they tore at each other. Their eyes were filled with chaos and they had completely lost their rationality. One powerful ancient expert after another fell like wooden stakes in front of him. However, in the midst of the intense battlefield, not a single person noticed himself. Everyone treated himself as one of their own. It's mind control. It can change its appearance to become everyone's ally. Wang Chong thought to himself. Wang Chong had already experienced this before. The mysterious leaf could change its appearance and imitate the other party and the other party's abilities as it pleased. His spiritual power was already far beyond that of an ordinary person, but he still fell for it, let alone others. The scene continued. On the battlefield, more and more people fell into the slaughter, constantly falling around him. The next moment, Wang Chong felt that he seemed to be a little excited. The slaughter continued, and countless fragmented memories kept appearing in Wang Chong's mind. However, another wave of boundless darkness assaulted them. This Yong is too dangerous. In the darkness, Wang Chong suddenly heard a voice. The language was clearly different from the Tang dynasty, but Wang Chong could understand it. So this monster is called the Yong. Wang Chong immediately understood. This was the first time he knew the identity of this monster. He also suddenly understood why it possessed such powerful spiritual power. Because it was not weaving an illusion, but a dream. We must kill it. Otherwise, it will cause trouble sooner or later. Its spiritual power is too powerful. None of us can resist it. Moreover, this beast has no rationality. It can't control its own strength at all. Forget it. After all, it grew up with His Majesty. The Yong's lifespan far exceeds that of humans. Even when His Majesty was around, it could still cause such a disaster. Thousands of years later, when His Majesty is no longer around, who can stop it? It will be a catastrophe. Think of those soldiers who were killed. Your Majesty, please uphold justice for those soldiers. Your Majesty, please uphold justice for those soldiers. Your Majesty, please uphold justice for those soldiers. Kill the Yong. Waves of emotional shouts resounded in the sky. But soon, all the voices died down. The next moment, the surroundings fell silent. Wang Chong saw another scene from the Yong's memories. This was a simple and unadorned hall. Everything was shrouded in a hazy shadow. In the hall, Wang Chong saw a figure as imposing as a mountain. He wore a yellow robe and an emperor's crown. He seemed to have an extraordinary status in the hall. But for some reason, he looked a little sad. I had no choice but to do this. I hope you can forgive me. This is the only way I can protect you. One day, you will find someone similar to me. At that time, you can follow him just like how you follow me today. He is me. That dignified and resonant voice resounded in his ears. At that moment, he seemed to understand but not understand. Other than the last sentence, he could not remember anything else. Following that, countless ancient martial artists appeared in the main hall, armed to the teeth with torches raised high in their hands. Then, who was brought to a large swamp. There, saw a large crater. This will be the place where you will be sealed forever. You will sleep underground forever. The leader of the generals said in a low voice. The next moment, a large iron cage brought he underground. Then, there was endless darkness and coldness. And then, there was no more and then. Several times, he moved underground. climbing aimlessly and arriving at the crater. Countless times, he could have left this place. However, when it saw the imposing and familiar giant rune above the giant crater, it hesitated again. What had sealed him was not some unfathomable power, but the person represented by that seal. What had sealed him was the human heart. So this crater wasn't dug by the Origin Immortal Lord at all. The one who dug it was actually the Yellow Emperor. And the one who sealed him was also the Yellow Emperor. Wang Chang's mind was in turmoil, and he couldn't quite put it into words. From the memories of the Nightmare Beast, it seemed to have some kind of intimate connection with the Yellow Emperor. This was something that Wang Chong had never imagined at the start. What followed were countless fragments of the Nightmare Beast's memories of 1,000 years underground. No one could endure such a long period of solitude. This was true for both people and for the Nightmare Beast. In these 1,000 years, it had anticipated, enraged, and pained. Time and time again, it had thought about leaving. But each time, it had retreated before that familiar seal at the top of the crater. These dark memories had lasted until that person had followed the crater to this place. The person you are waiting for will appear in 800 years. Guard this place for me, and I promise that you will find the person you are waiting for. This is our agreement. The person's voice came from the darkness, mellow and warm, imbued with a soothing power. The Nightmare Beast immediately calmed down, and then it began another long wait. So the Origin Immortal Lord sought him out of his own accord. Wang Chong suddenly understood. This ancient lake had become the place where the Yellow Emperor had sealed the Nightmare Beast, but in the end, the Origin Immortal Lord had found it and made it his cave. And the Nightmare Beast had become his guardian beast. The sea turned into mulberry fields, the land sank and shifted. The great swamp of the past had long since turned into mountains and deserts, but this Nightmare Beast was still waiting underground. At that moment, perhaps because of its relationship with the Yellow Emperor, Wang Chong felt some sympathy for the Nightmare Beast. But it only took a moment for this feeling to vanish. This underground cave was littered with corpses. Without a doubt, all of them had died at the hands of the ancient Nightmare Beast. You brought this upon yourself. Wang Chong coldly said to himself. Buzz. With the Nightmare Beast's psychic energy, Wang Chang's psychic energy swelled, reaching an astonishing level in just a few short moments. The Nightmare Beast's psychic energy was unbelievably powerful, especially after accumulating it for more than 1,000 years. As a beast that was born with the ability to control psychic energy, the Nightmare Beast's psychic energy reached a level that no human martial artist could ever hope to reach. In fact, Wang Chong even felt as if he was facing the boundless ocean alone. Buzz! In a few seconds, Wang Chang's psychic energy broke through its original shackles, growing by 10%, 20%, 30%. In a few short moments, it had grown to Wang Chang's level, and it was still growing. Too powerful. Truly unbelievable. This was the first time Wang Chong had experienced such a long-lost pleasure ever since he had experienced chi deviation. The pleasure of psychic energy was completely different from the pleasure of stellar energy and the physical body. That kind of mental pleasure was hard to imagine. Not only that, when Wang Chong obtained the Nightmare Beast's accumulated power, his psychic energy grew limitlessly. Soon, Wang Chong felt that his psychic energy growth had reached a bottleneck. This was an invisible barrier. In fact, Wang Chong had not even known that this barrier existed before this. So psychic energy is the same as martial arts. It also has a higher realm similar to minute subtlety. At this moment, Wang Chong's mind was filled with understanding. For the vast majority of martial artists, psychic energy was only divided by strength. There was no such thing as a special realm. This was because psychic energy was different from stellar energy. It was intangible and formless. But at this moment, Wang Chong suddenly understood that by borrowing the Nightmare Beast's power, he had finally touched upon a realm that the vast majority of psychic energy practitioners could only dream of. Chapter 1496. Boom! Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong immediately opened his mind and focused all his energy on absorbing the Nightmare Beast's most primal and purest spiritual energy. Together with his own spiritual energy, it was like a roaring tidal wave that covered the heavens and the earth, capable of toppling the mountains and overturning the seas, smashing heavily against that invisible barrier. Once, twice, thrice. As the waves grew denser and denser, the intensity of the bombardment increased. In the next moment, accompanied by an earth-shattering boom, Wang Chang's mind shook, and the entire world seemed to come to a standstill. Wang Chang's ears were completely silent. Not a single sound could be heard. It seemed like only an instant, yet it also seemed like countless long centuries had passed. Finally, like a silver vase exploding, like a horseman charging out, the invisible barrier of spiritual energy outside Wang Chang's body suddenly shattered with a loud rumble. That majestic spiritual energy that had stopped growing immediately poured out through the shattered barrier like mercury, stirring up once more. And when the growth of spiritual energy reached its limit, it immediately changed from quantitative to qualitative. Rumble. What Wang Chong had anticipated happened. The majestic spiritual energy suddenly shrank inwards and collapsed, rapidly shrinking to less than 10% of its original size. But the density of the originally formless spiritual energy had increased by more than 5 or 6 times. And in the depths of Wang Chang's mind, a white particle the size of a mustard seed had condensed. At this moment, Wang Chang's mind was suddenly in turmoil. Spiritual core. This was the manifestation of spiritual energy materialization. Wang Chong had never imagined that the formless, and untouchable spiritual energy would manifest in his body in such a way. Spiritual energy could not be touched. This was determined by its innate nature. It was also an iron law and barrier that could not be broken. The distance between the two was like the distance between heaven and earth. But once it was broken, it meant that there were limitless possibilities. It meant that he could evolve like the nightmare beast. Although he might not be able to reach that level, it definitely meant a whole new world for him. Rumble. The growth of Wang Chang's spiritual energy had originally stopped, but after collapsing inwards and materializing, it actually exploded once more. In the blink of an eye, it had doubled. And it was still growing. My spiritual energy, no. Just then, a faint sound came from the life core. Wang Chang's finger had heavily injured the nightmare beast's life core, greatly reducing its strength. But the nightmare beast was not dead yet. The life core was its life. As long as the core existed, it would not die. But as long as Wang Chong was willing, destroying the nightmare beast would only take a few minutes. At this point, do you think you still have a chance? Wang Chong said indifferently. Having lost its physical body and its vital life core, the young beast was now just a lamb waiting to be slaughtered in his hands. But the nightmare beast's psychic energy truly was enormous. Wang Chang's psychic energy had swelled to 4 times its original level, but he still hadn't been able to completely absorb the energy of the core. On the contrary, Wang Chong felt a vague sense of fullness. Beast said, "This should be the spiritual energy. Nightmare is, this is Beast, Chen." Wang Chong thought to himself, and a kind of enlightenment rose in his heart. There was a difference between humans and beasts. Under normal circumstances, no matter how strong a human was, it was impossible for him to be stronger than a tiger or an elephant. It was the same in terms of mental strength. The young beast was an innate psychic monster. Its body structure was different from humans, so it could reach a higher psychic realm. In this aspect, even the top martial artists could not compare. Almost there. With a thought from Wang Chong, a white light the size of a grain of rice shot out from his fingertip. However, this was not any gang chi, but pure power condensed from mental energy. Buzz. Wang Chong extended his finger and touched the black life core. In the next moment, a soul seal formed from solidified soul force immediately branded itself onto the life core of the nightmare beast. There was a flash of light, and in an instant, the black yong's life core became dim. All of its aura was sealed inside. Congratulations to the host for defeating the ancient nightmare beast. You've obtained 300,000 points of destiny energy. At almost the same time, the stone of destiny's familiar voice rang out in his ear. Wang Chong raised an eyebrow, greatly surprised. He had only received a notification that killing a dragon beast would reward him with destiny energy, but he had not expected that killing this nightmare beast would also reward him with so much destiny energy. At the same time, unbeknownst to Wang Chong, the instant the Stone of Destiny's voice rang out, the nightmare beast, which Wang Chong had sealed within its life core, shuddered. As if sensing something, it suddenly let out a shocked howl. This that aura. How is this possible? Why does it have the same aura as Master? Could it be that the person I'm waiting for is? In that instant, many thoughts flashed through the nightmare beast's mind. One day, you will find someone similar to me. At that time, you can follow him, just like you followed me today. He is me. The person you're waiting for will appear in 800 years. Stand guard here for me, and I promise that you will find the person you're waiting for. This is our agreement. In a flash, the words of the two most important people in its life rang out in its mind. In that instant, the nightmare beast seemed to understand something, and it suddenly felt an unprecedented shock. When it had first heard these words, it had thought that it would only need to wait a few hundred years. However, what it had waited for was countless long centuries. When it had heard these words a second time, it had thought that it would only need to wait 800 years. However, it had waited for nearly 1,000 years, but the person it had prophesied still had not come. Thus, it had been filled with resentment, hatred, and madness. But in that instant, it suddenly understood that that person had always said 800 years, not just 800 years. It had misunderstood from the very beginning. So it's him. In that instant, the nightmare beast howled madly in its mind, but no sound could leave its life core. Wang Chong's mental seal had not only sealed its consciousness, but also made it impossible for its voice to leave. But no matter how much the nightmare beast howled in pain, Wang Chong could not hear it at all. With a wave of his hand, he immediately drew the nightmare beast back into his undergarments. It was also at this moment that a series of groaning sounds could be heard. Wang Chong followed the sound and saw that all the martial artists who had been knocked unconscious by the nightmare beast were waking up. What's going on here? Didn't I return to the sect? Why am I here? My head hurts. Just what happened? I clearly obtained the origin immortal art and became the world's #1. Why did I return here? The martial artists sat up, stood up, or looked around in confusion. It was clear that they had not yet awoken from the nightmare beast's illusory world. Bastard, you're a member of the Blazing Fire sect. Why are you with me? You must have done something to me while I was running. Truly, enemies often cross paths. Whether or not I get the origin immortal art, I'll kill the people of your Black Een sect first. The crowd was still in a daze from the illusory world, but the mood quickly changed, and the cave quickly became a place of conflict between sections. The search for the origin immortal art had gathered people from various sects, and many of them had grudges with each other. Without the nightmare beast, the grudges between the sects inevitably resurfaced. As for how they had arrived here, no one cared. Wang Chong indifferently watched this scene and inwardly shook his head. All the martial artists that had come here had come for the origin immortal art, but now no one cared about the origin immortal art. Everyone was immersed in their grudges. It's the demonic emperor's disciple. Someone finally noticed Wang Chong. When the origin immortal formation opened, the demonic emperor had personally taken action to help Wang Chong deal with the Black Een ancestor and Song Yuanyi, so everyone knew of Wang Chong's identity. Everyone of the evil path has the right to punish him. Everyone work together and kill him. A few of the more daring martial artists fiercely stared at Wang Chong in the cave. And with their reminder, Walala, almost everyone turned their attention to this disciple of the evil emperor. The demonic emperor isn't with him. They must have split up. Everyone, don't be afraid. Work together and kill him. Immediately, someone started to make a ruckus. Clang, clang, clang. In the blink of an eye, many martial artists had unsheathed their weapons and aimed them at Wang Chong. Almost everyone knew about the disaster the demonic emperor had wreaked upon the martial arts world, and the entire martial arts world had been under his reign of terror. Now that they saw that the demonic emperor's disciple was alone, They would not let go of this chance to enforce justice on behalf of the heavens. Kill him. Kill this little demon. Otherwise, the events of the martial arts world will repeat themselves. Whoosh! A large wave of martial artists charged at Wang Chong, savage light in their eyes. But before they could reach Wang Chong, they suddenly stopped. What's that? They finally noticed the 2-meter-tall corpse of the nightmare beast not far from Wang Chong's feet. In this bottomless pit, everyone felt as if they were treading on thin ice. Every step they took was filled with trepidation. The young beast's enormous body and strange appearance immediately made one think of the 3 dragon beasts that could not be killed no matter how hard one tried. In an instant, everyone seemed to understand something. He saved us. They stared at the sword dripping with blood in Wang Chong's hand and the 2 halves of the nightmare beast's corpse, complicated expressions on their faces, none of them able to speak. Those who could appear here were not idiots. It was obvious that the reason why they were here and fell into that unknown dream was most likely because of that monster. Wang Chong coldly watched, a smile on his face. He had expended a great deal of effort to free these people from the nightmare beast's control. He wanted to see if these people would still attack him now that they knew the truth. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.